Good morning, everybody. Happy Halloween. Aaron here, Canadian Looney. Don't have a big disguise on today. This is actually what I look like. It's kind of scary. Let's get into this, though. It's Friday, so thank God for that. We've got a big speech from Pierre and his posse, speaking to young people and to everybody, just Canada in general. We're going to watch this, and then we'll slip right into question period, right on time as it begins. Let's kick this off. I think we're going to start with Melissa Lanceman. Good to see everybody. Aaron, Canadian Looney, like, share, subscribe, get notified. Let's have a fun Friday, gang. Good to see everybody. What's up, Kirk? How you doing, buddy? Let's check it out.
And every single day since that, he's been fighting for young people around the country. I want to introduce you also to Eric Malillo. He's a three-time MP. He's only 27 years old, from Northern Ontario. These two guys are fighting the fight every single day on the House of Commons. I'm so proud to call them friends. I'm so proud to call them colleagues. Put your hands together for Jonathan Rowe and Eric Malillo.
Well, almost 4 years ago, I was in a room very similar to this in a small town of Newfoundland called Clarenville. And Pierre Poilievre came to my riding. And I said, that's the kind of leadership we need. I'm sick and tired of this Liberal government sacrificing my future. I was 24 years old, and I decided that I wanted to run. People said I was too young, or that I'd be better off waiting. But older people would tell us we are the future. Oh, you're the future. I'm here today to tell you guys, to tell all of us, we're not only the future, we're today. The young men and women that went overseas, that fought for this country, the young tech brains that have molded our whole country, our whole world has been founded on the vision and the passion and the drive of young people. And we can feel that here tonight. And I have no doubt in my mind that this room will continue to change our nation, because we are not going to let this Liberal government sacrifice our future.
That's a tough act to follow. It's great to see such a great crowd here today, everyone, and it's a pleasure to be able to share a few words with you. As you heard, I'm Eric Malillo from Kenora, way up in northwestern Ontario. Thank you. Yeah. 27 years old, and proud to be part of our Conservative team fighting for the future for all Canadians. I know I've heard from too many of my friends, from people that are around my age, not just where I come from in Kenora, but right across the country, that they're struggling to afford food, struggling to afford rent, given up completely on the dream of home ownership, and now more and more we're hearing people struggling to find a job. It's absolutely ridiculous, but this is the reality after 10 years of Liberal government. And that's why our Conservative team, under the leadership of Pierre Poilievre, is fighting to restore Canada's promise, that promise that you can work hard, play by the rules, get a good education or job training, and have a good life, have a good job, a house that you can afford in a safe neighborhood. It's a very simple promise, and that's the promise that we're fighting to restore. So that's why I'm so proud to see such a great contingent of MPs here today, a great crowd here for this incredible event. And I'm looking forward to hearing what the leader has to say about our plan to ensure that young Canadians can have an affordable place to call home, a good paying job, and hope and optimism for a better future. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much for being here today.
Those are the guys fighting in Ottawa every single day for the things that you want. We're proud to call them friends, we're proud to call them colleagues, and we're proud to see what they're going to do to restore this country's promise. And look, I was in a campus club. I know that lots of you probably got into this room because you once walked through the doors of a campus club. So the next person that I'm going to introduce is someone I'm really, really proud of, somebody I'm really, really proud to know and to call a friend. Angelique Covino is the president of U of T Mississauga's Conservatives, and she's here to take over.
Hello, everyone. My name is Angelina Covino. I'm the president of the UTM Conservatives. I believe in the importance of empowering youth voices within the Conservative movement and ensuring that our concerns are heard and represented in shaping Canada's future. Most of us here know firsthand how bad the situation is. We've seen the brutal job market for students and recent grads, inflation that drove the cost of living higher than we've ever known, and a housing market so bleak that many young people have given up hope of owning a home. That is why today I am proud to introduce the only leader fighting to restore our nation's promise for young Conservatives and Canadians. Pierre Poilievre grew up in Alberta as the adopted son of 2 school teachers. He lives in Ottawa with his wife, Anaïda, and their children, Valentina and Cruz. As a member of Parliament and former minister, he helped the previous Conservative government cut taxes, balance budgets, deliver affordable homes, and crack down on crime and corruption. When he was housing minister, the average home cost $450,000, and the average one-bedroom rent was just $970. After Liberals doubled housing costs, inflated food prices, and unleashed crime on our streets, Pierre is fighting back. His purpose is a Canada where young people can find good jobs to buy affordable food and homes on a safe street. Ladies and gentlemen, the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada and His Majesty's loyal opposition, Pierre Poilievre.
Merci beaucoup. Wow, I'm definitely the oldest guy in the room. You know, we were having some debate about the age cutoff for the Conservative Youth Caucus. And I said to Melissa Lansman, our deputy leader, who's very good at setting the rules, I said, I'm 46. Can I sneak in to the Youth Caucus? She said, no, it's definitely not 36, maybe 35. I said, well, 35 with inflation is 46. She wasn't buying it. But I want to thank Angelina for that wonderful introduction and for leading our campus Conservative Club, the biggest political club at the Mississauga campus of the University of Toronto. Give her a big round of applause. Angelina, like all our young Conservatives, are fighting for homes, jobs, and hope, and they refuse to sacrifice their future to the Liberal government. Angelina et nos jeunes conservateurs se battent pour des emplois, des maisons et de l'espoir. Ils refusent de sacrifier leur avenir au gouvernement coûteux de Mark Carney. Ils insistent d'avoir la promesse du Canada, et c'est la raison pour laquelle nous sommes ici aujourd'hui. I want to thank all of you for being here, all these young people. We know that you all must be young because you're here listening to a speech about economics from a middle-aged or an aging politician rather than spending your evening trying to get approved for a $900,000 mortgage on a 400-square-foot apartment. Maybe you're here today for the free snacks. Do we have some free snacks? Yeah. I don't blame you. I mean, we're in a time when a good meal is considered to be a juice box and a granola bar after Liberals doubled the cost of food and doubled the... In fact, what they did is they doubled the debt that you're going to have to inherit as the youth. And it's no coincidence that when they doubled the debt, they actually doubled the food bank lineups and doubled housing costs. These things go together. Mark Carney and the Liberals are spending your tomorrow on their today with their irresponsible, costly big government policies. You know, Liberals tell us all that we shouldn't be talking about these substantive issues like debt and costs and inflation and jobs. They say that young people are only interested in vibes. like the vibe you get when you see that your rent is now $2,000 a month, or when you get to the checkout and you realize you have to put an item back on the shelf because your bank account has run empty before you finished making your purchase. Those are the types of vibes that we've gotten used to after 10 years of costly Liberal government. But Mark Carney promised there would be different vibes, that he was going to be a tight-fisted banker, and that he promised that he was going to move with unimaginable speed to do all of the opposite things that he talked about and that his party did for the prior 10 years. So now that it's been 7 months, it's a good time to review the promises that he's made and which have been kept. He promised we'd have the fastest growing economy in the G7. He delivered the fastest shrinking economy in the G7. He promised to double home building. His housing agency says home building is going to drop by 13%. He promised that he would be judged by the prices at the grocery store. He delivered. More expensive food. In fact, food prices are rising twice as fast as the Bank of Canada's target. And we just learned that 7% more people will be lined up at food banks this year than last year. This is after Liberals already doubled their lineups at those food banks. He promised he would negotiate a win with President Trump and get a deal by July 21st. Still no win, still no deal, still no elbows, still no jobs, my friends. He promised that he would change everything. In fact, everything is getting worse. You know, they tell us, though, they're just about to do all of these great things. That's the just about party, right? They remind me of the student you all know who is just about to stop procrastinating on that essay. Next week, he's going to stop procrastinating on that essay. Or it reminds me of when we used to go to the student pub at the University of Calgary, and there was that sign on the wall that said, "Free beer tomorrow." So you showed up tomorrow, and it still said, "Free beer tomorrow." But tomorrow never came, and beer prices would just keep going up and up and up. It reminds me of the lady who got married for her 4th time. And as she was leaving the wedding hall and driving with her new husband to the hotel, she said, "I'm feeling a little bit nervous." He said, "Why?" She said, "This is my first time being with a man." And he said, "Well, how is that possible? You've been married 3 times already." And she said, "Well, each of my prior husbands had a condition. My first husband had a heart condition. And so when we got back to the hotel room, he got so excited that sadly he died of a heart attack. My second husband had an eye condition. And so he didn't see a tree as he was driving back to the hotel, and he hit it and didn't survive the crash." And the man said, "What about your third husband? What was his condition?" She said, "Well, he was a Liberal." And so every night he would just sit at the end of the bed and promise how good it would one day be. You all heard Mark Carney gave this big hyped up speech. It was an address to the nation. He pulled these poor young people into a lecture hall, and boy, did he ever give them a sleepy lecture. It was very, very slow and very, very boring. It was almost like a gigantic tranquilizer. But you know, there was something different about this particular speech, and he's been making all these grand promises, but that was not the case in this speech. Gone were the grand promises, replaced with grim warnings. He said that things are going to get worse, and that change will take a very long time, after he had promised to move at unimaginable speeds. And then he let the truth out of the bag. He said young people are going to have to make more sacrifices. More sacrifices. Now, no more Mr. Carney, the young people in this room and across this country have already sacrificed enough. They have worked hard, they've done everything right, and they deserve a bright future of homes, jobs, and hope. Think of what you've already sacrificed for this costly Liberal government. You've sacrificed home ownership after they doubled the cost of buying a home. You've sacrificed your nutrition and health after liberal food inflation drove up the cost at the grocery store. You sacrificed your paycheck at the altar of high liberal income taxes. You sacrificed even your job to employment killing taxes, red tape, and temporary foreign worker programs. In fact, this generation, and I mean this literally, this generation has sacrificed more than any, this young generation, I mean, has sacrificed more than any generation since the Second World War. There is no doubt in my mind that all of you are working harder and longer for less than your parents and probably your grandparents. And it hasn't been since the heroes that won us our freedom in the 40s that we have seen a generation work so hard and so long for so little. And all because of liberal policies that have deprived you of the basics that you should have been able to take for granted here in Canada. Let's start with jobs. Youth unemployment today is 15%, the highest in a decade and a half. It is up from 13.7 when Mark Carney took office only 7 months ago, after he promised he would create more jobs. In fact, it's worse than that. It's not just the unemployment rate. It's the 3-decade record in the lows for the employment rate. Only 53% of youth who are between the ages of 15 and 24 are working. 53% is the lowest level since 1998, and most of you in this room weren't even born in 1998. That's how bad it is. And many of you are asking, as you drive around town, dropping off your resumes, you ask, what did I do wrong? Why can't I find a place to work? Hundreds and hundreds of resumes, no phone calls returned. The answer is, you did absolutely nothing wrong. You did everything right. Your phone should be ringing off the hook with job offers because you are qualified and you have been preparing for this moment to contribute to our economy. And my message to you is that Conservatives will fight for your jobs, and better than that, we will put in place the policies that will allow you to have a job again. And I want to invite up on this stage an incredible young man, Liam. Liam, get up here and tell us about the state of jobs in this country. Where's Liam? There's Liam. Come on up here, Liam. Give Liam a round of applause.
Thank you. Many of my friends have shared the same story, sending out countless hundreds of applications, only to receive a handful of responses. In my first year of university, I was lucky enough to obtain a full-time internship that paid. Since then, it's becoming increasingly difficult to find meaningful work. Just this last summer, even getting a part-time minimum wage job has become more and more competitive with more and more applicants. Although I was eventually able to receive an unpaid internship, I'm worried as a graduate this year that I will not be able to find long-term meaningful work. Thank you.
Tragically, a story that's all too common, but Liam, we're here with a message of hope. We are not going to let the Liberals sacrifice your future. You will have a great job and you will bring home great pay and have a beautiful future. Thank you very much, Liam. Used to be, young people had no problem getting jobs. I remember there was a time not long ago when there was a shortage of workers. There were more jobs than people. A young person who showed up with a clean shirt, a decent resume, a nice smile, and a good attitude would walk away with a job in just a few days. But today, that entire equation has changed. As we've seen that jobs have been blocked and killed by liberal taxes that make our small businesses uncompetitive. They brought in anti-energy and resource laws that prevent us from digging mines, building pipelines, and generating other major private sector economic activity. And then they have further replaced Canadian workers with low-wage temporary foreign workers that drive down wages to profit Mark Carney's corporate lobbyist friends at the expense of Canadian youth. And speaking of newcomers, our young people who come from around the world with qualifications as doctors, engineers, nurses, and architects are banned from effectively working in the professions for which we need them by bureaucratic gatekeepers that won't grant them a license to practice, even though they are well qualified. Thank you. Thank you. So while we have young immigrant doctors who are forced to drive Uber, we have 6 million Canadians who don't have a doctor. This is insane. You know, they say in Toronto, if you have a heart attack, don't call 911, call an Uber, because the driver is probably a doctor. And yet we block those brilliant young immigrants from working in the field for which we so desperately need them. And speaking of our immigration system, we had the best immigration system in the world, where we brought people in reasonable numbers that we could absorb into our jobs, our health care, and our housing market. But Liberals totally destroyed the system with chaos, numbers that were too high, and without doing proper criminal background checks on people coming to this country. And this has served nobody, not newcomers, not multi-generational Canadians, not our economy, housing market, or health care. And our young people have suffered the most. Young people in Canada are welcoming, and we want to bring people, the best people from around the world, but we should only do it in the right numbers, in numbers we can absorb, so that we can have housing, health care, and jobs for all. And speaking of housing, you are the first generation in Canadian history that cannot afford a home. It used to be taken for granted that if you got a good job right out of school, you paid off your student debts quickly, you could buy a house and start a family in your 20s. It was normal for 26 and 27-year-old couples to own a house with a yard and space in a safe neighborhood. That is what we took for granted in this country. But over the last decade, Liberals have literally doubled the cost of housing, with regulatory red tape that blocks home builders from building, high taxes that make up more than a third of the cost of a new home, and by delaying building permits, so it now takes 7 years to get a subdivision approved. Now, obviously, that hurts everyone, but the young people are harmed the most. And look at the state of our housing market after 10 years of Liberal promises. Today, we have rent exploding. Young people are paying more and more for smaller spaces. Almost 60% of young Canadians worry that they will not, 60% of all Canadians worry they won't be able to keep up with their rent or mortgage and might actually face the loss of their home altogether. A majority of Canadians, 55%, say that they are giving up on home ownership. In fact, a recent poll by Abacus Data found that a majority of Canadians have now accepted that they will live in a smaller house, further away from their jobs, and in a lower quality. My friends, maybe this is what Mark Carney was trying to do with his hypnotic speech. He was trying to lull you into accepting a worse quality of life. And this is what worries me the most about Liberals. It's not just that they've allowed crime and chaos and joblessness to rage out of control. It's not that they have broken our immigration system. They've done all those things. My worry is that they are going to try and get Canadians to accept this permanent reduction in our quality of life, that their electoral strategy to win re-election is not one of hope, but one of deliberate hopelessness, to tell you that better is not possible after they ran an entire campaign promising that better was possible. My friends, my message to you here today is that you don't have to accept a reduction in your quality of life or in the expectations of your future. You deserve better than this, and we will deliver better than this. And I want to invite Doreen and Juliette up on the stage to tell us a little bit about the hopeful future that we have. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Doreen. Thank you, Pierre. I'm working and studying full-time, and I want to start to plan my future. However, for my friends and I, even with education and multiple jobs, saving up for a down payment feels impossible. My parents were able to buy a home in their 20s, but for my generation, rent alone takes up most of our income. We want to build stable futures here in Canada, but right now it feels like that stability is slipping away further and further.
And I have to say, I'm part of the group that's worried. I don't see how I can plan to have my career and life here. It's just becoming a much more distant dream for me. I'm studying pre-med health sciences, and I want to become a Canadian doctor because I care about people and I want to serve my community. But in order to do that, I need a country that's going to provide a foundation and support for young students like me to actually be able to find these jobs and positions that we were promised after years of studying.
Absolutely. Friends, give it up for Doreen and Juliet. No, when Mark Carney comes before our youth and says that people like Doreen and Juliet should sacrifice more, I wonder what it is that they haven't already sacrificed. They sacrificed the chance to have a job and a home, to start a family. They've sacrificed their time and their energy to work extra hours. And again, they're told that this is not enough, that the government wants another pound of salt. The government wants to take even more and add new burdens. And I think of the country that I was promised as a young person, where if you worked hard, you got a great life. You could afford a home, and you could live in a nice neighborhood. And I think of people like Adam, who is struggling every day and every way. Adam, why don't you come up on the stage? Where's Adam? Adam's hiding over here. Come on, let's give Adam a round of applause.
Hello, everybody. Mr. Poilievre, thank you for calling me up. So something that my generation has been really concerned about is the increased cost of living. We've seen rampant inflation. We've seen the cost of everyday items such as gas and food going up. Some of my friends, they work multiple jobs, and they're still struggling to make ends meet. And so something that I'm personally concerned about is, where is Canada going to be in the next 5 to 10 years? Are things going to be affordable? Is it going to be a livable city? And yeah, once again, thank you for speaking with us.
Thank you very much. How tall this guy is. What is he? What are you, 6'4"? I look up to that guy. Yeah, what a great guy. You stand tall for all our young people, and you will have a bright future, my friend. And I want to invite up someone else to talk about how we're going to have more jobs for our youth, jobs and paychecks that will allow them to pay the bills. Everyone give a big round of applause and a warm welcome to Ben Cochran. Ben.
Hi, I'm Ben. Thank you, Pierre, for having me up. Many young Canadians are finding it hard to get jobs that match the skills they've gained at university. And despite working hard to build their work experience, many of my friends often find themselves in short-term roles or underemployed. University used to be the ticket to success, but the jobs just aren't out there anymore. We're hoping Pierre can help us get them back.
Thank you very much, Ben. Merci beaucoup, Ben. Ben, mon message pour vous et à tous les jeunes Québécois et les jeunes Canadiens à travers le Canada. J'ai un message pour vous. Vous n'avez pas besoin de vivre comme ça. Vous n'avez pas besoin d'accepter ce standard que les libéraux ont imposé. Vous avez le droit d'avoir des logements, des emplois et un bel avenir. Vous avez travaillé fort, vous avez fait vos études et vous avez vous préparé. Moi, je vise à créer un Canada qui est abordable pour nos jeunes, qui permet aux jeunes pour lequel les Canadiens souveraineté et avenir. That was the promise of Canada. The promise of Canada was that it's better than the American dream. We've all heard of the American dream, but that's something you wake up from. A promise is something that is kept. It's like a deal. You do this, you get that. And that's what brought so many waves of immigrants from around the world. It's what allowed so many generations of Canadians to start at the bottom and climb to the top. And the promise was this: you work hard, you get an affordable house, you get meat and potatoes on the dinner table every single night. When your head hits the pillow, you know that you're going to be safe as you sleep, and that your car will still be in the driveway when you wake up in the morning. And that we're all united under one common flag. But a promise, to restore a promise, you need a plan. And Conservatives have that plan for our youth, for homes, jobs, and hope. Now, it starts with stronger take-home pay. Stronger take-home pay is necessary for you to make your mortgage and rent payments, to pay off your debt, and to start a new family. Stronger take-home pay is three parts. First, you need a job. Second, you need to bring home what you earn. And third, the dollars you bring home need to preserve their buying power. So let's go through them one by one. Jobs. We as Conservatives are going to unleash the free enterprise system to generate the high-paying jobs and opportunity that will not only put food on your table, but will allow you to produce the goods and services that our economy needs. That starts with unlocking the trillions of dollars of riches that are right beneath our feet. We should be the richest nation on earth. We have the third biggest supply of oil. We're the fifth biggest in natural gas. We have uranium, the biggest supply of uranium. We have the fifth biggest supply of lithium. We have the longest oceanic coastline. We have the shortest shipping distances from the Americas over to both Asia and Europe. The only thing standing in the way is the government that blocks our brilliant workers and businesses from bringing these riches to the surface and putting them in the pockets of hard-working Canadians. In fact, if you look at our molecules, our atoms, our rocks, our water, our land, our dirt, we should be the richest country on earth, and Conservatives are going to unlock those riches for our youth. We will.
All right, guys, we're going to cross over to the House of Commons now. We have action on there. We've got, I see Mike Barrett's delivering a speech. I want to include that. So that Pierre Poilievre speech is available a lot of places. It was very interesting, though. You should definitely check it out. Let's get into this.
Party status. And the composition of our committees reflect the composition of the chamber. And when a bill goes to committee, like C3, it undergoes scrutiny. We hear testimony from witnesses, from experts. We have those debates. And really good work can happen at committee. And it's one of the most important roles of members, is their service on standing committees. And for the government, in this case, the Liberal government, to want to ignore the work of committee, the amendments that get passed at committee to their legislation, the improvements that get made, what it does is it concentrates power, it seeks to concentrate power in the executive, in the very, very few. I think if you asked most Canadians, they would want to see the majority of members and the work of the majority of members at committee being reflected in the legislation, not simply having the Prime Minister by edict ramming things through the House. And so the effect of that, of looking to override and undermine the work of committee, is that it erodes public trust, which is something that we've seen fall to all-time lows in recent years. I would say what's more is it undermines good governance and presupposes that the executive, in presenting it, that cabinet had all the answers, and that the the view of the members at committee and their witnesses, and those debates aren't important and aren't relevant. But how did we get to where we can have this parliamentary democracy? What did we do to earn it? Well, it was bought and paid for with blood and sweat. Thousands died, and we stand on their shoulders today. And the more than 118,000 Canadians and Newfoundlanders who died in defense of democracy and the promotion of democracy in conflicts since before our country was Canada. And it started with the Fenian raids. Now, that was the defense of Canada from US-based militants. And I can only imagine, Madam Speaker, that with less than 3 minutes left that you'd think I'd be starting in 1866. But it was consistent through the world wars, through the Korean War, Congos, the Cyprus, other UN engagements, and Afghanistan most recently. 159 Canadian men and women in all of our lifetime died with the Canadian flag on their shoulder, excuse me, along with 7 Canadian civilians. And I'll note that in Afghanistan, the Brockville Rifles, my local regiment in Brockville, was awarded battle honors for that, in the defense of and promotion of the rights and values that we have here at home. That's what I'm reflecting on this week. And in my service as a regular member of Canada's Army, and I know there's other members in this House, on both sides of the House, who served in uniform, I thank them for their service. I know what it takes of an individual. I know what it takes of the family. And you don't have to have deployed to have sacrificed. You don't have to have put on the uniform to know and to recognize and appreciate that sacrifice. And that's what I want members to reflect on as they take a decision, as they take decisions as we go forward in this Parliament. What's in the best interest of Canada? What protects the value of our citizenship, of our passport? And what promotes that democracy, our parliamentary democracy, and respects the vote of those who participated, who exercised their franchise as a Canadian in the last election. We're here to represent everyone, and it's an incredible honor, it's a privilege, but it's a big responsibility. And I reflect on that too. And so, while we take a decision as a House on what to do next with C3, I would just ask members to consider our parliamentary democracy, our traditions, how we got to be here, the defense and protection of those freedoms, and of course, why this process that was undertaken at committee is so important. Thank you.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, Madam Speaker, there's a fundamental flaw to the member's proposition which he's put before the House. He tries to give the impression that the bloc working with the Conservative and anything that they might decide in a committee should ultimately prevail because they make up a majority, they believe, a perceived majority. In reality, and I've been in a situation when I was in opposition where I was not a part of a political entity that had party status. I like to think that my value was just as great back then as it was any member of the Manitoba legislature. Just like I would ultimately argue that representatives from the Democratic Party and the Green Party inside the House also should be treated equally within members' rights. I'm wondering if the member would provide his thoughts with respect to the 340 plus members. Does he believe that they should be treated equally inside the House in terms of rights?
Leeds, Granville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
Well, of course, the parliamentary secretary, Madam Speaker, is ignoring his own actions and his government's own actions. So the NDP asked to be given official party status, to follow his argument all the way through, to make sure that they get the same rights. But that's not how this works. It is a question of numbers. How many members did you send here? And the government, the Liberal government, has said that it is a question of how many members they sent here. And we're sure that over the last 10 years of their government, that they made sure that they said committees are important, they're the master of their own destiny, and the House will respect what committees have to say. Well, what's been the change? Well, the change is that they don't have a de facto majority or a majority, and they don't want to respect what happened at committee.
That's right. Commentaire. The honourable member for a change in Sarnia, Lambton, Chikwagnong.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for his speech and for his military service. I think that people who stood in frozen trenches and fought for the freedoms of this country, and people that have fought all along, would not really be happy about people that never lived in Canada being granted citizenship, because it has to mean something. What does the member think about that?
The honourable member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
I'll thank the the member for her question, and say that this was why they went. It was for a future that they couldn't have imagined. When you had children, literal children, lying about their age so they could go and fight for an idea that they had only just come to understand as they were coming of age as adults. And they believed in what we've had the blessing and the benefit to enjoy since then. And that's this parliamentary democracy. I'll note that committees are not just they don't serve an advisory role to the executive, to the Prime Minister, that he should dismiss out of hand simply because he can. I would say that responsibly, that ethically, that he ought not to, that he can't do that, because that's why this place has been structured in such a way that we do send bills to committee, and then they're referred to a committee by the House. If they're just going to do whatever they want to do at the end of the day, well, then why the pageantry of all of these more than 24 standing committees? That's not what this place is for.
Of the members' time, right on time. Statements by members. Déclaration des députés. The honourable member for Ottawa Centre.
Speaker, we live in complicated times where misinformation and disinformation is threatening the safety and security of our communities. I had the chance to participate in an event hosted by Carleton University in my riding of Ottawa Centre with Dr. Cynthia Miller-Idris discussing hate, conspiracy theories, and challenges to democracy. It was an important discussion reminding us of the many forces that seek to undermine everything that makes Canadian democracy and our society the envy of the world. Algorithms and echo chambers have polluted civic discourse, leading to rising disinformation, disagreement, and hate of all forms. We must remember that the work of maintaining our values of democracy, rule of law, and respect for rights is hard and ongoing, but it is work that we must always keep up. All of us in this Parliament have an important responsibility to always listen to each other and engage in thoughtful debates to build Canada strong. Thank you, Speaker.
The honourable member for Sarnia-Lambton, Kejwanong.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The budget is coming after Halloween, so I want to tell you the things that I've seen. Spending so scary, it'll tax us to the brink. With inflation so high, it'll drive us to drink. The crime in our streets is now terrifying. With all getting bail, we are now verifying. Food prices so high, it'll spook you for sure, with more hikes to come that no one can endure. With nothing been built and no trade deal in sight, this Liberal government is really a fright. Job losses are climbing like a very grim reaper, and this budget for sure will be driving them deeper. But there's hope in the midst of this terrible nightmare for the safe homes and streets that we all want to share. For affordable lives in a country so free, our Conservative team will bring it to thee. Conservative bills will stop all the crime and bring a great outcome to the end of this rhyme.
The Honourable Madam Speaker, I rise in this House to mark the 50th anniversary of the Maison des Jeunes de Boucherville. It all began in 1973 when a group of young people began dreaming of a youth centre in Boucherville. The community granted their wish, and it was such a success that the facilities had to be expanded and modernized several times. Today, more than 1,200 young people from Boucherville regularly attend the youth centre, not to mention all those who participate in its many activities. I was a big fan of the Life Size Games there during my teenage years. So congratulations to Mary Cloud Maulo, the director who was once my day camp counselor, and to Caroline Chamberlain, chair of the board of directors, and to all those who have made this place a place for young people to meet, exchange ideas, listen and support each other, and above all, get involved over the years. Happy 50th anniversary.
For Labrador.
Madam Speaker, today I rise to pay tribute to the late Max Short, a recipient of the Order of Newfoundland and Labrador, a proud Newfoundlander with strong roots in Labrador, a fisherman, a man whose life was devoted to the people of the fishery. From his early days on the water to his leadership in the fishery union and later as a representative of the federal government, Max brought deep knowledge, fairness, and integrity to every role that he held. He was the bridge between harvesters, industry, and government, always focused on ensuring that the voices of coastal communities were heard and respected. Those who worked alongside Max will remember his steady hand, his sharp mind, and his unwavering belief in the value of our fishery as the livelihood of rural Newfoundland and coastal Labrador. We thank him for a lifetime of service, leadership, and friendship. On behalf of all Labradorians and Newfoundlanders, I extend sincere condolences to his family, colleagues, and friends. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Stormont Dundas, Glengarry.
Madam Speaker, this week we learned the Prime Minister's company Brookfield has been and continues to be one of Canada's largest tax dodgers. Tax experts revealed that Brookfield avoided paying a stunning $6.5 billion in Canadian taxes over 5 years through the use of offshore tax havens. While chair of Brookfield, the Prime Minister set up 3 multi-billion-dollar investment accounts in the Caribbean, claiming their headquarters was above a bicycle shop in Bermuda. Nobody believes that. He is shielding profits from Canadian taxes, and those are funds that could line the Prime Minister's pockets through future bonus payments. Canadians pay nearly half of their income in taxes and are rightfully angered to see the Prime Minister dodging his share in offshore tax havens. So the question is simple. Despite being asked multiple times, why won't the Prime Minister confirm that he has no investments in offshore tax havens? What is he trying to hide? And why won't he just come clean to Canadians over his latest ethics scandal?
Honourable member for Winnipeg North.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. Did you know that Canada actually contributes 2.5% to world trade, Madam Speaker? That's at the same time in which we make up decimal 5% of the world population. The Prime Minister of Canada in the last election made a commitment to Canadians, and that was to look for trading opportunities beyond the United States, Madam Speaker. And we are aggressively doing so. Just last week, week, the Prime Minister had a wonderful discussion with President Marcos, and now we have set our targets on trying to achieve a trade agreement between the two great nations of Canada and the Philippines, Madam Speaker. Some of the best coconuts in the world come from the Philippines. Some of the best beef and pork come from the prairies in Canada. Potatoes from PEI. Madam Speaker, there is so much opportunity between trade between Canada and the Philippines. And this is a Prime Minister, this is a government that is looking to other countries to get trade.
The Honourable Member for Kitchener South, Espler.
Mr. Speaker, I visited the Kitchener Food Bank. Their CEO told me that visits to their centre have quintupled in the last 10 years. What happened 10 years ago to start all this? These Liberals came into power promising to grow the middle class. But after 10 years of their massive spending on nonsense, like gender-neutral rice in Vietnam, the middle class in Canada can no longer afford to eat. 39% of Canadians experienced food insecurity in the last 12 months. I do not think that our multi-millionaire Goldman Sachs banker Prime Minister has any idea what Canadians are going through right now. No. Every time we bring this crisis up, the Liberals say we should be thankful for their school cafeteria program. Well, if that program was working, why has food bank use by children doubled over the last few years in our country? Why would Canadians trust the Liberals, who can't run a post office or a passport office, to do something as important as to feed our children? Okay. We can't and we won't. Conservatives will fight for a budget that makes life affordable again so that you can feed your own kids again.
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Member for Rivière-des-Mille-Îles. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Women's History Month reminds us that equality in Canada is not a given, but the result of a struggle that is embedded in the very heart of our institutions. More than a century ago, the famous five, Emily Murphy, Nellie McClung, Irene Parlby, Henrietta Murray Edwards, and Louise McKinney, established a fundamental principle of our democracy, namely, women are recognized as persons in law and therefore eligible to sit in the Senate. This decision laid the foundation for women's participation in parliamentary life and paving the way for their full recognition as citizens and constitutional subjects. Today, this legacy continues thanks to 5 women honored here in Ottawa, whose commitment reflects the same vision of justice, leadership, and social transformation. By celebrating them, we affirm that women's history does not belong only to the past, but is still being written today in this Parliament and across the country.
The member for Newcombe-Gwillimburg.
Strap in, Madam Speaker. Tonight, Canadians from coast to coast to coast will be on the edge of their seats as the Toronto Blue Jays take on the Dodgers in the pivotal Game 6 of the World Series. Across 5 games, 54 innings, the Jays have excited us, inspired us, and shown us the kind of grit and determination that unites us all. Their impressive display against the Dodgers have the entire country believing this could be it. After 32 years, 1 win away from glory. It's an underdog story for the ages, and it's so much more than just another ball game. Whether they're watching at the Rogers Centre, at a local sports bar with friends at home, every Canadian will be taking in every pitch, hit, and homer with bated breath. Let's get behind the Jays, cheer them on, watch them make history. We want it all, Madam Speaker. Go Jays!
The Honourable Member for Longueuil, Charlemagne. Madam Speaker, today I pay tribute to a remarkable leader, Jean Melançon, outgoing director of the Longueuil Agglomeration Fire Department. After 37 years of service there, including 12 as director, Jean is preparing to bring his vast experience and expertise to another fire department. A man of courage, integrity, and humanity, Jean has not only devoted decades to protecting the citizens and property of our region, but has also inspired generations of firefighters with his commitment to excellence. As a firefighter and director, Jean has helped shape a safer and stronger community. His passion for safety and his sense of duty will remain etched in our memories. The legacy he leaves will be felt for years to come. Thank you for everything, Jean, and good luck in your new endeavors. Thank you.
Questions orales, oral
Here we
questions.
go.
Alors,
Let's get started.
The honourable member for Mégantic-l'Érable, Lot-Binière.
Come on.
After 10 years of this Liberal government, and despite a new Prime Minister, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Liberal friends and insiders keep lining their pockets with tens of millions of dollars, while hundreds of thousands of Quebecers have no food to put on the table. Why is the Prime Minister feeding BDC, Via Rail, and EDC execs annual bonuses of over $100,000 instead of feeding families who can no longer afford groceries? What world does the Prime Minister live in, expecting young people to make more sacrifices while he gives millions to the rich? The Honourable Government House Leader. Madam Speaker, happy Halloween, first of all. And there's another celebration coming, and that's Christmas.
That's on them. This will unfreeze.
At Christmas time, people look forward to that. It's been a big year for Canada, so this year in particular, people want to celebrate Christmas. So we're going to table a budget, and Canadians would like our Liberal plan, the Prime Minister's plan, to build a very strong country. They would like that budget to pass. So can my honourable colleague commit today not to be a Grinch and to vote for this budget? The honourable member for Mégantic-l'Érable, Lot-Binière. Well, at Halloween, is the government House Leader going to stop scaring Canadians? What Canadians want is an affordable budget for an affordable life. And it's that government's responsibility to deliver. And I'd like to quote from the Nutritious and Affordable Food Basket's findings in their report. Over the past 3 to 4 years, more and more families supported by Alima have been experiencing severe food insecurity. That's Canada in 2025. Does the Prime Minister realize that young families have nothing left to sacrifice? The Honourable Government House Leader. Madam Speaker, unfortunately, the Conservatives have systematically voted against all our supports for Canadians, which aim precisely to help them get through the month and make ends meet, whether it's assistance for families, dental care, pharmacare, child care. Systematically, everything we've put in place to make life more affordable for Canadians, the Conservatives have voted against.
After 10 years, Liberal insiders and elites never had it so good as the Prime Minister forces young Canadians to make sacrifices. Young Canadians can't afford a home, yet CMHC execs got $30 million in bonuses for helping contribute to the Liberal-made housing crisis. Over 700,000 kids line up at a food bank every month, yet EDC execs get $45 million in bonuses for helping cover Liberal incompetence on COVID benefits. How many more sacrifices do young Canadians have to make so the Prime Minister can keep lining the pockets of his elitist buddies?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House.
Madam Speaker, my honourable friend, well, you know what he's done? Time after time after time after time, the measures that would help Canadian youth, they're against them. Whether it be student loan relief, whether it be the fund or the savings program for first-time home buyers, whether it be creating and building national projects that are going to give opportunities to young people from coast to coast to coast. This member stands in his place and votes against it every single time, Madam Speaker.
Member for Calgary.
If any of those programs actually work, 700,000 kids wouldn't be lined up at food banks every single month. And incompetence pays in this government. Just look at the Justice Minister. A Liberal-made housing crisis, a Liberal-made cost of living crisis, a Liberal-made food bank crisis. Liberal insiders and elitists get paid to enable Liberal failures. When will the Prime Minister stop rewarding Liberal incompetence and actually give Canadians an affordable budget for an affordable life?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House.
Madam Speaker, it's Halloween, and we certainly want to wish a happy Halloween to all Canadians. There's another big holiday coming up. Canadians would like to have a Christmas, a holiday season in peace. No ads with the Leader of the Opposition, that Grinchy guy, screaming at them through their television screens or their telephone screens, Madam Speaker. Mr. The finance critic on the other side should stand in his place right now now and tell Canadians they can be off the hook. We're not going to have an election. We're going to vote for that great Liberal budget.
What an effing loser McKinnon is. He's so disgusting, repulsive. You can tell he smells like never been punched once, like never had to pay a consequence for shooting off his big ragged mouth.
The honourable member for Dufferin-Caledon.
Sacrifice more. That's the message this Liberal Prime Minister just gave to young Canadians. You know, the young Canadians living through generationally high youth unemployment. Young Canadians who have mostly given up hope of ever owning a home. Yep. Meanwhile, Liberal insiders get rich. Liberal appointed executives at BDC are getting on average a bonus of $216,000. A young Canadian would be desperate to have that as a salary. So as the budget approaches, what sacrifices are these young people being asked to make while they get Liberal insiders rich bonuses?
Right on.
The Honourable Secretary of State.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The members opposite claim to be there for youth or to be concerned about youth, and yet at every opportunity when there is a chance to vote for investments and supports for our young people and families, they vote against. They will have another opportunity in this budget to support the tax cut on first-time homebuyers, to support the permanence of the National School Food Program, to support continued investments in early learning and childcare. I hope that they will join us in avoiding a Christmas election by supporting the budget. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Dufferin-Caledon.
The question actually was about young Canadians and
Right.
what they're going to be asked to sacrifice, which of course they didn't answer. Young Canadians are going to have to figure that out in the budget, and sacrifice they have. They've sacrificed by not being able to own a home. They've sacrificed by having generationally high youth unemployment. And this Liberal message is, we passed all these things. Things should be better, except they're not. Yeah. 700,000 children now at a food bank despite their programs. Youth unemployment is the highest it's been in a generation despite their programs. Their programs aren't working, and their economics is driving young people into unemployment.
The Honourable Parliament Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Conservatives claim to care about young people, yet every time a measure comes to support them, they vote against it. They voted against a national housing strategy, the first home savings account, against expanding mortgage criteria, and now they won't commit to voting for cutting the GST. That would save first-time home buyers $50,000. Don't worry, Madam Speaker. Canadians know that Liberals are here to support them, and we hope that the other side can show they're really serious and they care about young people by supporting our budget on November 4th and avoiding a Christmas election. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Gaspésie, les Îles de la Madeleine, Listégouche. Madam Speaker, it's Halloween and the Liberals are trying to scare people. They're threatening to call an election if their budget isn't passed as is, but they're in a minority. All they have to do to get their budget passed is make a deal with the Bloc, the Conservatives, or the NDP, or anyone. We in the Bloc, we have demands that are in line with what Quebecers want. The Liberals can choose to respond to those needs or find other supporters, but if they're the ones refusing to negotiate with anyone, aren't they the ones acting in bad faith? The Honourable Government House Leader. Thank you. What I would point out to the member is that the Bloc, with its 22 members, has demanded $36 billion in additional spending that Canadian taxpayers would have to foot the bill for. But yes, Madam Speaker, we are listening. We are working with all the opposition parties. And yes, we obviously want this budget to pass and to avoid a Christmas election. The question to my colleague is he going to vote against a Christmas election in Quebec, or is he going to support the budget? The Honourable Member for Gaspésie, les Îles de la Madeleine. Madam Speaker, the Liberals have three choices of supporters for their budget. Of course, we would like them to work with us because our demands address the real needs of Quebecers around health care and seniors' purchasing power. Of course, we'd prefer that they invest in Quebec rather than give fortunes to oil companies or tax breaks to web giants. But that's the Liberals' choice. For now, they're choosing to go it alone. They're not working with anyone. Why are they holding Quebecers hostage with threats of an election at Christmas instead of negotiating? The Honourable Government House Leader. Madam Speaker, as for my leader and my colleague, the Finance Minister, they have shown great openness. It's the leader of the Bloc Québécois who said, without even having heard a single word of what's in the budget, he has taken the position that he'll be voting against the budget. So who's not showing a constructive attitude here? Someone who says, no matter what you do, I'm going to vote against it? Or is it the people who are listening and working with the opposition and trying to get this budget through so that we can avoid a Christmas election? The Honourable Member for Côte-Nord, Kawachawachamak, Nitasasan. Madam Speaker, the forestry industry is at a breaking point. It can no longer bear the costs of the softwood lumber dispute on top of Donald Trump's tariffs. Representatives of businesses, workers, and municipalities were in Ottawa this week. They are demanding that the federal government cover 50% of future countervailing duties to be paid until the end of the dispute, when our companies will be reimbursed. Ultimately, this will cost the federal government nothing. But in the medium term, it would save businesses and jobs. Will Ottawa do its part? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yes, the federal government is there and always will be to support our lumber industry and our forestry industry. We're very aware that this is a crucial industry in many parts of Quebec and Canada. We will continue to work cooperatively with the provincial governments, including Quebec. We will be there, and we are, and we will be there. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent, Akiwenrak. Madam Speaker, after 10 years of Liberal government, after 10 years of compulsive deficits, the debt has doubled. A deficit is like throwing fuel on the fire of inflation. And unfortunately, we have a government that's saying one thing and doing the opposite. They're telling young people to make sacrifices, but meanwhile, they're spending $20 billion on consultants, much to the delight of the regime's cronies. Can this Prime Minister stop asking young Canadians to make sacrifices and finally table an affordable budget for an affordable life? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Madam Speaker, we're all going to see on November 4th what this government's budget is. It's a budget of the 21st century. It will address the very serious issues we're facing now, given what's happening in the U.S. So I sincerely hope, I would like the Conservatives and the Bloc to vote in favor of this budget so we can avoid a very destructive budget, a very destructive election, rather, at Christmas time. The Honourable Member. Madam Speaker, what Canadians and Quebecers would like, and he knows because this is exactly what he did when he was in the provincial government of Quebec, what Canadians want is a balanced budget. This government, over the past 10 years, has pushed 2.2 million people into the food banks. He's part of a government that has caused 700,000 kids to have to resort to food banks. Will this government take responsible action and table an affordable budget for an affordable life? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Madam Speaker, the budget that will be tabled on November 4th is a responsible budget, and it's an ambitious one. The time is now. This is a decisive point. We need to take action to support Canada's economy so that our children's future is well protected. Now is the time to take action, and we will be doing so strongly.
Madam Speaker, after 10 years of this government, Liberal elites and insiders have never had it so good. But the Prime Minister told young Canadians they need to sacrifice. While Canadians are lined up at food banks, this Liberal government hired the Prime Minister's buddies to staff his new defence procurement and major projects offices. He's paying them $679,000 and $577,000 salary. Of course, he's paying the woman less. That's his track record. So this at a time when Canadians are struggling to afford to live. Will this Prime Minister stop making young people sacrifice so he can line the pockets of
the Honourable Secretary of State?
Madam Speaker, I know the party opposite has had a bad week and they're focused on their leader. But we're focused on affordability. We're focused on building Canada. Madam Speaker, on November 4th, we are going to come forth with a generational budget that will invest in Canada. We will.
You have order, so I don't have to give the honourable member the opportunity to answer from the top. The honourable Secretary of State. 60.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I know the party has had a difficult week with their leader, and they're focused on anything but. But we are focused on affordability and building Canada. On November 4th, we will come forth with a generational budget that will invest in Canada. We will invest in Canadians. We will build this country because we believe in Canada. Thank you.
The honourable member for Sarnia-Lambton-Quijano.
Well, so far they've built a record-smashing 2.2 million food bank visits, and over 700,000 of those are children. Rent has doubled. According to the Canadian Income Survey, 380,000 seniors are living in poverty. They can't afford homes, and they can't even afford food. Some of them are living in their cars. When will this Prime Minister stop using taxpayer dollars to make his rich friends richer and finally give Canadians an affordable budget for an affordable life?
That's right. The Honourable Secretary of State.
Madam Speaker, we will take no lessons from the Conservatives. Madam Speaker, on November 4th,
Wayne Long is a little coward. Like, look at how he looks like he knows that he's being an ass. It's embarrassing. He's a disgrace to New Brunswick. I like New Brunswick, but Wayne Long is a disgrace to human nature.
we are focused, we're laser focused on delivering a generational budget. We will invest in Canada. We will invest in Canadians. We will invest in infrastructure, defense projects, and housing. Madam Speaker, we believe in Canada. We will build Canada in the strongest economy in the G7. I hope the members opposite will join us and pass our budget and not cause a Christmas election. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You, member for Tecumseh-Williamsburg.
Right when this Prime Minister was telling young Canadians they would have to make sacrifices, he was signing off for bonuses for Liberal elites. These taxpayer-funded payouts included $11 million for the fat cats at Via Rail, $30 million for the bureaucrats at Canada Mortgage and Housing, and $60 million for the bankers at the Business Development Bank, all while everyday Canadians struggle to afford the necessities of life. Instead of asking Canadians to sacrifice more, why doesn't the Prime Minister cut off insiders cashing in on Canadians' misery?
The Honourable Secretary of State.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We do understand the pressures that Canadians are facing, and at the same time, the Conservative Party offers really nothing new. Our government is empowering young Canadians to build lifelong careers. This is one of the reasons we are fast-tracking the Build Canada Homes program to get homes built, to fast-track major projects, to create tens of thousands of high-paying careers across this country. Those careers are available to young people, and we know that they're at the heart of building Canada strong, building the strongest economy in the G7, and we encourage members opposite to support the budget and avoid a Christmas election.
The Honourable Member for Tecumseh-Williamsburg.
Madam Speaker, it's impressive the Liberals are actually recognizing Christmas. Canadians are being asked to pull the wagon through the mud while Liberal cronies ride comfortably on top. The government isn't worried about families lining up at food banks. They're too busy lining the pockets of insiders. They're not bothered with cutting home prices. They're too focused on cutting checks to bumbling bureaucrats. They don't care about rising debt and inflationary deficits so long as the money keeps flowing to the Liberal elites. When will this Prime Minister stop using tax dollars to reward his friends?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, I see the Conservative misinformation spin cycle just continues and continues, but it never produces a grain of truth. If the Conservatives want the truth, we'll tell them the truth. The true story is that the Conservatives never stand up in this House when it comes time to support youth. They voted against, actively undermined their futures by voting against student loan support, by voting against grants for students. They voted against a national housing strategy many times in this House. They voted against a tax-free savings accounts for youth to help them realize the dream of home ownership. They voted against the National School Food Program.
The Honourable Member for Kenora-Kiwitino.
According to the Liberals' own numbers, they overspent on the bureaucracy at Fed Nord by 60% of what was planned last year, Madam Speaker. That's $2.7 million spent on themselves that should have been used to support communities across Northern Ontario. Madam Speaker, while people across the country are struggling with housing costs that have doubled and a record 2.2 million people are visiting food banks, the Liberals continue to fund bureaucracy. So, Madam Speaker, when are they finally going to stop their out-of-control spending and deliver an affordable budget for an affordable life?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Well, Madam Speaker, we keep hearing about the Conservatives and their deep concern for youth, but they continue to vote against any project or program that would support the youth of this country. They vote against it all, Madam Speaker, and I'd like for once to hear exactly what they would reduce in order to meet their absurd budget demands. Let's have a good budget, an affordable budget on November 4th, and let's have the support of the Conservatives opposite.
The Honourable Member for Pierre Boucher, Les Patriotes Verchères. After years of willful blindness, Ottawa is finally taking action against discount truck drivers, but it's far from enough. The federal government said they'd done 100,000 inspections, but in fact, they didn't do 100,000. They said they actually only did 1,000. That's 100 times less. And when we questioned them, they admitted that actually it wasn't even 1,000, it was only 650. The rest were outreach activities. Luckily, ridicule doesn't kill, unlike discount drivers. So when is Ottawa finally going to take this problem seriously? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Madam Speaker, our absolute priority is the safety of our roads and drivers. The Minister is acting in good faith, and in the budget there will be targeted programs worth $67 million to deal with the problem of non-compliance. The Bloc can vote in favour of that. They can help us pass the budget and avoid a Christmas election. Will they do that? The Honourable Member for Pierre Boucher, Les Patriotes Verchères. Madam Speaker, if it weren't for the Bloc, nothing would have ever been done. We suggested 10 solutions to the problem of discount drivers. The Liberals are only implementing one of those, and they want us to applaud them. But there's still no federal investigation. They're still allowing foreign workers to incorporate. There's still no data sharing between governments. In short, Ottawa is tackling corporate fraud, and that's great. But the heart of the problem is getting those drivers off our roads. They're dangerous and they don't follow the rules. When will Ottawa finally take action? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Madam Speaker, once again, our absolute priority is the safety of our roads and drivers. Budget 2025 provides significant measures to provide for road safety. And once again, the opposition will have a choice. Are you going to vote in favour of better safety on our roads and for our drivers? I certainly hope you will vote in favour.
Langley. Madam Speaker, on Halloween we expected ghosts and goblins, not ghoulish government spending. But this Prime Minister told students they need to make more sacrifices, more spooky words from a government that's already drained their wallets. Young Canadians are haunted by high prices, buried under debt, and scared stiff for their futures. Right. The Liberal spending is out of control. It's a fiscal fright fest. Yeah. When will this government stop its reckless tricks and finally give Canadians the treat of affordability?
That's right. Yeah.
Honourable Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, it's fortunate that next week we will have an affordable budget for Canadians, and we hope that the members opposite will join us in supporting that budget. It will include many ways to invest in young people, in young families, in making homes more affordable, in making food available at schools, and making dental care available, and a number of other things that will support Canadian families. I trust they will support us and avoid a Christmas election. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Abbotsford South Langley.
Madam Speaker, Canadians have been struggling for a decade. They have got nothing left to give. Canadians are being told to cut back while this Liberal government refuses to cut their own wasteful spending. That's nationwide, right. Food bank visits have hit 2.2 million, including 700,000 children. In my province of BC alone, food bank visits went up 80% since 2019. Wow. Canadians can't afford groceries or basic necessities. They certainly can't afford another Liberal budget.
That's right.
When will this Prime Minister finally deliver an affordable budget for an affordable life?
That's right.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Conservatives claim to care about youth and affordability, but on this side, we're about solutions, not slogans. We're cutting income taxes, cutting GST for first-time home buyers, putting together a national school food program, launching Build Canada Home to increase home affordability. We launched Office of Major Project. Canadians don't live in a pretend world. They know we're here to help them, support them, make life more affordable, and build the strongest economy of the G7. So we hope you can support us and show you really care about youth and affordability on November 4th. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Madam Speaker, manufacturing companies throughout the greater Chaudière-Appalaches region, including Armoire de Cuisine Bernier in Lévis, are being stifled by U.S. export tariffs of 25%. These tariffs will double on January 1st to 50%. Madam Speaker, the United Kingdom is at 10%. The EU and Japan, 15%. Canada's situation is scandalous. Canadian companies cannot continue to eat into their margins indefinitely. Is the Prime Minister, he said he was going to get a deal. Why is he breaking that promise? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Madam Speaker, I'd like to remind our colleagues that it is the U.S. that triggered this trade war. One moment. We will find an agreement with the Americans, but not at any cost, not any deal. A bad deal is worse than no deal. Our main focus is to defend Canadian workers, maintain access to the American market, and we will wait as long as it's required till the Americans come back to the table.
For Regina, Wascana.
Madam Speaker, an agreement was finally reached last night at the APEC summit in South Korea. Unfortunately, the agreement was between the United States and China to reduce tariffs, but not Canada. This Prime Minister flew to Asia, met with the Chinese president, had a nice photo op, but still no deal. Madam Speaker, in this international game of deal or no deal, why is it always no deal for Canada from this Prime Minister?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I want to reassure that Canada is on the diplomatic stage every day, both diversifying trade and defending Canadian interests. We will continue to work every day to ensure that Canadian businesses, Canadian citizens, Canadian residents are well protected in everything we do. We will continue to negotiate every trade deal we can. The United States is our biggest trading partner. We're ready to be at that table while we continue to diversify the trade around the world. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Regina, Wascana.
Madam Speaker, it's not just Chinese canola tariffs that are punishing Canadian farmers. India has slapped a 30% tariff on Canadian peas and a 10% tariff on lentils. Canada cannot export beef to the United Kingdom, but the UK can and does export beef to Canada. When will this Prime Minister finally stop with the photo ops and finally get a deal for Canadian producers?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Speaker, we will always stand up for Canadian farmers, whether they're beef farmers or farmers who grow wheat in our country, and we will make sure that we will get the best deal for them all around the world, and that is the work the Prime Minister is doing. He's been in Asia meeting with various leaders from around the world to make sure that we open new market, new opportunities for Canadians so that we can double our non-U.S. exports over the next decade, and we will do that for Canadian farmers, for Canadian manufacturers, and for Canadian workers.
The Honourable Member for Port Moody-Coquitlam.
Madam Speaker, I've seen firsthand the extraordinary work of our Canadian Armed Forces, their courage, their sacrifice, and the quiet toll that their service can take. And I've seen how easily that service can be overlooked in the rhythm of our daily lives, even though Canadians feel such gratitude. Could the Minister of Veteran Affairs update the House on how our Government of Canada is commemorating and recognizing Canada's veterans for their service and dedication?
The Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs.
I thank my colleague from Port Moody Coquitlam for this question and note the presence on the Hill today of her spouse Gaetan, a 22-year Canadian Air Force veteran. I also thank the member from Kitchener-Conestoga, for leading the first flag raising on Parliament Hill this morning. Madam Speaker, the poppy is an enduring symbol of leadership, of loss, and of the responsibility to remember those who have served and sacrificed in uniform. As the Royal Canadian Legion launches the 2025 Poppy campaign, I encourage all Canadians to commemorate and remember the veterans who have served.
Very good.
The honourable member for Vaughan Woodbridge.
Food Bank Canada report a record-smashing 2.2 million visits to the food bank in just 1 month, the most ever. The CEO of Food Bank Canada said she is shocked that people are stopping at the food bank on their way home from work because they can't afford groceries. She said, and I quote, "It's really shocking to see how far people are falling behind every single day," end quote. After a decade of liberal deficits and inflationary spending, people just can't keep up. When will they realize their inflationary deficits are driving up the cost of food and driving people to the food bank?
Honourable Secretary of State.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think it's important to once again underline the fact that the report that the members opposite cite also lists, inclusive of the Canada Disability Benefit, the Canadian Dental Plan, Early Learning and Childcare, the National School Food Program, the National Housing Strategy, among the many tools and investments that support alleviating poverty in this country, all of which have been voted against or opposed by the members opposite. We will have a budget next week that will continue to invest in Canadians, in young Canadians and families, and we trust they will join us and vote for the budget and avoid a Christmas election. Thank you.
The honourable member for Vaughan Woodbridge.
The only people who seem to want a Christmas election is this Liberal government. Canadians don't want Liberals to force a costly election. They want an affordable budget. The Liberal government doesn't seem to get it. We have record Liberal deficits and a record number of people who can't afford food. 2.2 million people lining up at food banks. Over 700,000 of them are children. The more they spend, the more Canadians pay at the grocery store. So, will they present an affordable budget so families can afford to feed themselves?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Well, Madam Speaker, it is disheartening to know that Conservatives don't even read the report that they quote in this House. It's obvious because the very report that they're quoting from Food Banks Canada asks our government to move forward with income assistance for people living with a disability. They ask for a dental care plan. They acknowledge the work of addressing the housing supply issues in this country. And they also mention a national school food program, which that party has voted against time and time again in this House. When it comes time to take 400,000 kids out of food bank lineups, what does the opposition say? They say no.
The honourable member for Cambridge.
Madam Speaker, first the Liberals made it unaffordable to feed your kids. Now they want applause for feeding them. Canadians used to line up at the grocery store. Today, they line up by the millions at food banks. Under the Liberals, Canadians are working full-time and eating part-time because paychecks shrink while grocery bills balloon. 82% of Canadian households say they don't have enough food to eat. In college, 82% gets you an A. But for the Prime Minister, 82% of Canadians going hungry means a giant F. When will this Prime Minister stop failing Canadians, allow families to feed their own kids in their homes?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Again, as I said, Conservatives claim to care about youth and affordability, but on this side, we're about solutions, not slogan, right? You're voting to cut. We're cutting income taxes, reducing GST for first-time home buyer. We're putting forward the National School Food Program. We're putting a number of measures to increase affordability, increasing the supply of home in order to lower rent. We're here for Canadians. Canadians don't live in a pretend world. They know what's going on. They know which party is there for them. That's why they voted for us on April 28th. We hope you can vote for our budget on November 4th. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Windsor, Tecumseh, Lakeshore.
Madam Speaker, each month in Canada, there are over 2.2 million visits to food banks. We talk about these numbers every day, and we watch them increase every month. These aren't just numbers, colleagues. These are the people that we serve. Many of them are workers whose paychecks haven't gone up the way grocery prices have. This Liberal government however, thinks that Canadians should sacrifice even more. When will this Prime Minister give Canadians an affordable budget for an affordable life?
The Honourable Secretary of State.
Madam Speaker, we've got good news for the Conservatives. They can help 5.5 million Canadians. Do you know how? They can support us on automatic federal benefits, giving benefits directly to 5.5 million Canadians, those that need it the most. But, Madam Speaker, the party opposite has a choice to make. Will they listen to their Grinch leader and not support our budget and cause a Christmas election? Or will they join with us and pass a generational budget offering hope and affordability to Canadians? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Manning.
Madam Speaker, the Edmonton Food Bank is serving more people now than any time in its 43 years history. Requests for food hampers are up 42% in the last 30 months. Food Bank Canada reports record use with 2.2 million visits in a single month. It took decades to hit 1 million and only 6 years under these Liberals to double it to 2 million. Madam Speaker, when will this Prime Minister finally give Canadians an affordable budget for an affordable life?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This feels a little bit disconnected when just last session we saw the opposition vote against a national school food program. But good news, they have a chance to do what's right, to correct their error of the past, and vote to support our budget in just a few days' time to make that program permanent. Will they do that, Madam Speaker, or will they vote for a Christmas election that nobody wants?
The Honourable Member for Poilievre.
The Prime Minister told young Canadians that they need to sacrifice more. Yet, when he ran Brookfield, he did anything but that. He hid money in a Caribbean island to dodge Canadian taxes. Not at a bank, mind you, but through a bike shop in Bermuda. And if this is the kind of sage financial advice that we are meant to follow, I wonder if we expect the owner of that bike shop to be appointed the next Liberal Minister of Finance. So a simple question, Madam Speaker, will the Prime Minister confirm that he is not stashing cash on offshore havens?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, we've got a generational budget coming on November 4th that's going to be building on the successes of the past couple of months, successes that include today announcing billions in new investments in critical minerals, 20 deals with countries across the world. This is just going to build on that, Madam Speaker. This budget is exactly what's needed for this moment. I hope the Conservatives support it and help us avoid a Christmas election that absolutely nobody wants.
The Honourable Member for Portage-Lisbon.
Just like the Prime Minister, an avoidance of an answer, because since day one, the Prime Minister has dodged public disclosure of his financial holdings. He's flipped through every excuse in the book, but he's finally running out of pages. This week, 163 Liberal MPs tried to protect their leader from scrutiny, but they failed. Conservatives passed a motion to investigate his corporate connections and potential conflicts. Instead of hiding behind a cloak of secrecy, he should finally come clean. So I will ask again, Madam Speaker, can the Prime Minister confirm he has not a single dollar stashed away in offshore tax havens?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, Canadians are rightly focused on the real issues. We face a dangerous and changing world, one that demands big responses, and you're going to see big responses in the November 4th budget. We've already heard about many of the initiatives that are coming out of it. Madam Speaker, I hope the members opposite will support this budget, avoid a Christmas election, and help Canada lead in the G7.
The Honourable Member for Parkland.
Madam Speaker, media has reported that Brookfield Asset Management, under the guidance of the Prime Minister, stashed money in Bermuda to avoid paying $5.3 billion in taxes between 2021 and 2024. What is it with these Liberal Prime Ministers and their billionaire islands? They just can't resist it. While the Prime Minister tells young Canadians that they need to sacrifice, the Prime Minister dodges the bill himself. We are supposed to be in this together, but it appears that the Prime Minister, in his role as chair of Brookfield, is avoiding paying his fair share of taxes. Can the Prime Minister confirm, does he have any investments in offshore tax havens, yes or no?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, Canadians know that our economy faces significant headwinds due to the trade tensions with the United States, and Canadians knew that, and that's exactly why they voted for this government and a prime minister with the economic resume to get us through turbulent times and build a stronger economy. Next week on November 4th, we'll present our first budget as a new government, which will focus on jobs and opportunities, which will focus on growth and productivity, which will make generational investments to unlock new opportunities for youth and all Canadians. The only question is, will Conservatives give...
The honourable member for Parkland.
Well, Madam Speaker, this Prime Minister has an economic resume, all right, an economic resume of offshoring tax money to foreign tax havens. Families are cutting back on meals. Young people are waiting to start a family. They're waiting to buy their first family home. Meanwhile, media is reporting that the Prime Minister's company stashed billions in offshore tax havens to avoid paying taxes. We've heard testimony that this Prime Minister's company dodged $5.3 billion in taxes from 2021 to 2024. That's a lot of programs, Madam Speaker. Again, can the Prime Minister confirm to Canadians that he has no investments in offshore tax havens, yes or no?
Yes. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
The only thing more frightening this Halloween than the Conservatives' disinformation in this House is a Christmas election, which nobody wants. The Conservatives are proposing to force an election on Canadians at a time when they expect this Parliament to stand together. Our budget on November 4th is going to present a strong path to build a stronger Canada, to unlock opportunities for all Canadians, to boost productivity and growth in this country, and the Conservatives will vote against. They've already said it. They haven't even seen the budget, and they're going to vote against. They're going to force a Christmas election upon Canadians. There's nothing more spooky than that.
Yeah. The honourable député de Rivière-des-Mille-Îles.
The honourable member for Rivière-des-Mille-Îles. Thank you, Madam Speaker. As Budget Day approaches on November 4th, our government remains committed to building an economy where everyone can succeed. Women, girls, and 2 SLGBTQI+ people have been clear. They want to see concrete measures to ensure they have the tools, the resources, and the opportunities they need to be safe, to feel protected, and to thrive. Can the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister for Women and Gender Equality tell the House how our government is working to deliver on this commitment? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's such a pleasure to say Madam Speaker. I want to thank my colleague who's a real leader when it comes to gender equality. I was with my colleague, the Minister of Finance, my colleague, the Minister for Women and Gender Equality, and my other colleague for Services to Indigenous People, and we were enthusiastically able to announce an investment of $660 million to advance gender equality. We traveled through the entire country. We worked from community organizations. They defend people, and they want predictability, and we will be there for that. The honourable member for Côte-du-Sud, Rivière-du-Loup, Katascomique, Témiscouata. Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister promised to negotiate a win with the United States on softwood lumber, but he completely failed. When he came to power, U.S. tariffs were at 14%. Today, they're at 45%. Under this Prime Minister, tariffs have tripled, and our workers are the ones paying the price. In communities such as Saint-Pamphile, Dacoam, Laurent-Versé, and Saint-Just-du-Lac, entire families depend on the forest industry for their livelihood. Madam Speaker, when will the Prime Minister stop betraying our workers, our families, our industries, and our regions? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. I must say, Madam Speaker, that I am astounded by the tone of the colleague's question, because he knows full well that our government is here to support workers in the forestry sector, and we've been doing that for a long time. We'll continue to do that because we know full well that that industry is critical for our rural communities, remote communities in Quebec, in Ontario, in BC, in New Brunswick. It's important to continue our work. We will do that, but we will not just sign off on any old agreement. We want the best deal in the best interest of everyone.
Member for Sudbury East, Manitoulin Nickelbelt.
Madam Speaker, hard-working folks in Northern Ontario are once again facing uncertainty. The Gogama sawmill in my riding has shut down for 2 weeks. When it reopens, it will be reduced to 1 shift. The Prime Minister promised to negotiate a win with the United States. Well, it's no win. its tariffs tripling to 45%, and it's a broken promise for softwood lumber. Our communities deserve better than empty promises. When will the Prime Minister stop selling out our forestry workers?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Well, Madam Speaker, the forest sector is core to our economy and core to our Canadian identity. My own family has been in the forest industry since long before Canada was a country. We will always stand with forest workers, and my heart goes out to the affected. U.S. tariffs and duties are completely unjustified. We know that. We're working at all levels to address it. In the meantime, we are also diversifying our economy. The Prime Minister is in Asia right now working on deals. We are going to be masters of our own future, Madam Speaker, and we will happily work with members opposite to help support the sector.
The Honourable Member for Vernon, Lake Country, Monastic.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister promised he would negotiate a win with the United States. He has broken that promise on softwood lumber. When the Prime Minister took office, softwood tariffs were at 14%. Now they're at 45%. This year in the North Okanagan, hardworking people are being sent home from mills because of this government's failure to secure a softwood lumber agreement. So my question is this: when will this government stop driving resources jobs out of Canada, stop taxing families into poverty, and start trusting Canadians to stand on their own 2 feet again?
Great question. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Speaker. I want to thank the member for asking a very important question. Of course, we are continuously working and making sure that we find new opportunities for our lumber producers. I know that ministers and many members of Parliament are going to British Columbia to meet many of those forest lumber producers to ensure that we are creating new opportunities. And that's why, Speaker, we are so focused on ensuring that we double our non-U.S. exports in the next decade. That means building new alliances and new friendships around the world. That is why the Prime Minister is in Asia meeting with leaders to create those opportunities. We'll continue to do that work so that our lumber producers remain the best.
The Honourable Member for Hamilton Mountain.
Speaker, Bill C-3 sets out a balanced, straightforward framework for citizenship. Canadian parents born abroad will be able to pass on their citizenship only if they can prove a substantial connection to Canada before the birth or adoption of their child. This is fair. Would the Parliamentary Secretary for Immigration please share with this House what is at stake if we don't act today to advance Bill C-3?
Here, here.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, from the moment she was elected, that member has committed herself to matters of fundamental justice, and that's exactly what's at stake in Bill C-3. In December of 2023, as colleagues will know, the Ontario Superior Court of Justice ruled that there is an inconsistency in Canadian citizenship law, and so C-3 rectifies that inconsistency. Whereas Canadians who are born here or naturalized here can, of course, pass down their citizenship to their children, that same right is not available to Canadians who are born abroad with children who are also born abroad. I urge colleagues to get behind C-3. I thank the NDP for their support. This is the measure that will improve Canadian citizenship law in conformity with the Charter, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Lanark, Frontenac.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, if we were to learn that China uses convict labor drawn disproportionately from Indigenous minorities to produce products to be sold commercially by the prison system, we would condemn this and we would ban that product. So what are we supposed to think of a report from the Aboriginal People's Television Network that milk produced at the Joyceville prison farm by inmates paid less than $1 an hour is being sold by Corcan for profit? Canada's correctional investigator says that in his view this represents, quote, a human rights violation. I agree with him, and I wonder, why is the government doing this?
The Honourable Secrétaire Parlementaire.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Madam Speaker, the programs in correctional services in Canada giving inmates opportunities to learn new skills mean that when they leave jail, they will be able to find work. They will not end up in a cycle where they're back in jail. These are programs that inmates appreciate, and the Canadian public does as well.
The Honourable Member for Winnipeg Centre.
Madam Speaker, it's alarming to hear the Prime Minister talk about sacrifice in this budget, when year after year his government has sacrificed the safety of Indigenous women and girls, ignoring the crisis of our murdered and disappeared loved ones. Now the Liberals push resource projects despite clear evidence that boomtown man camps fuel gender-based violence. Will this government finally put Indigenous women's safety before corporate profit, or will we be left out of the budget yet again?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, I thank my honourable colleague for the question. We know that Indigenous women, girls and Two-Spirit people continue to face violence at rates that are deeply disproportionate. This reality is rooted in generations of colonial policies and systemic discrimination and underinvestment in Indigenous communities. The calls for justice from the National Inquiry of Missing and Indigenous Women and Girls reminds us that responding to this crisis is not optional. It's a...
Do we have an issue? No, sorry. My apologies. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
This is the responding to the National Inquiry on Missing and Indigenous Murders of Girls and Women reminds us that responding to this crisis is not optional. It's a human rights obligation. Our government takes this seriously and remains firmly...
And I have to go to the next question. The Honourable Member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wonder if Canadians realize how much many of us as MPs want to be Team Canada.
Come on.
We want to be united. And we know we need to put Canada first. Yet the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board Act requires that we ignore whether Canada's put first when they decide where billions of dollars of our pension get invested. Will this government update the Investment Board Act to make sure Canada comes first?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House.
Madam Speaker, Canada's pension plans, the Maple 8 and others, lead the world not only in securing returns and a prosperous future for our retirees and our pensioners, but lead the world in ethical and above board investments all over the world, including in Canada. The CPPIB and other pension funds in this country will continue, I'm sure, to take investing in Canada very, very seriously.
And we have the Honourable Member for Longueuil-Charlemagne on a point of order.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'd like to seek unanimous consent from the House to repeat my SO31, as I was right behind the member who was doing the really big cheer for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and unfortunately the noise was too much. So I'd like to know if we could actually... Sorry, the Leafs.
The Jays.
The Jays. Oh my God, Toronto Maple Leafs. So I'd like to seek unanimous consent to repeat it if possible.
Honourable Member have unanimous consent to repeat her SO31.
No.
Agreed. So, the Honourable Member for Longueuil.
Madam Speaker, today I pay tribute.
I don't want to listen to her. Straight up. I've got more interesting things to do than listen to that piece of shit. This is going to be a Justice Committee meeting. That's Larry Brock, Andrew LAWTON, Mark Miller is the chair. And this is uncut, but we will just see how it goes. Let's get right into it. Should be
Edmonton Police Force, Nicole, welcome. You have 5 minutes. If that goes over, I will remind you, and I'll afford you a few seconds to conclude if you do go over. But please do try to keep it to 5 minutes. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Good. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the Standing Committee on Justice and Human Rights. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today on the critical issue of hate crimes and provide insights from a law enforcement perspective on Bill C-9, the Combating Hate Act. As Deputy Chief of the Edmonton Police Service, I oversee the Investigations and Support Services Bureau, which includes Major Investigations, Hate Crime Unit, and Protest Liaison Unit. Hate crimes require appropriate deterrence and public denunciation given the fear and harm the hate crime offender seeks to instill in our community. C9's proposed framework incorporates key legal principles for police in a balanced democracy, recognizing offender rehabilitation, denunciation, and deterrence alongside expanded abilities for police to keep our community safe. Edmonton is a fast-growing, welcoming, and diverse city. To keep all citizens safe and secure, our service supports all Bill C-9's recommendations. I will now review my support for C-9's proposed amendments. Removal of AG consent for hate propaganda offenses is an important change supported by our service. Police agencies can investigate these crimes while working with the Crown prosecutors. Police are required to weigh and balance information separated from evidence and objectively review suspicion of hate crimes from lawful, reasonable grounds to lay charges. The Crown's crucial role put into place decades ago to review all police charges at the higher reasonable likelihood of conviction standards will continue to apply, even with removal of AG consent. Consistent with all criminal code offenses, the EPS continues to support this additional level of prosecutorial oversight, so police and the Crown remain apolitical from any decision to lay or prosecute charges. However, from a police perspective, I also recognize that I speak on behalf of a police agency that has a specialized hate crime unit to conduct hate propaganda criminal investigations. EPS also supports the additional offense of willful promotion of hatred against an identifiable group by displaying certain symbols, specifically like the swastika, the SS bolt, or symbols of listed terrorist entities. This section clarifies these type of symbols, but also reiterates the requirement that police establish that a suspect was willfully promoting hatred against an identifiable group in public. EPS supports the creation of offenses of intimidation to provoke fear or obstruction of a person accessing certain places that are primarily used for religious worship or by an identifiable group for certain purposes. Again, this clarifies police arrest or detention powers. EPS strongly supports the implementation of a standalone hate crime offense. The current lack of an offense impacts investigations, hate crime data collection, and community safety operations. The following brief highlights our position. First, a standalone section would establish a consistent national definition of hate crime. Across Canada, more than 170 police agencies operate with varied definitions or none at all, creating inconsistency, confusion, and gaps in accountability. A single codified definition would align law enforcement, justice partners, the Crown, and academic research, enabling a coordinated and effective national response. Second, it would allow accurate and reliable data collection to help reduce hate crimes nationwide. Police often record hate crimes under general offenses like assault or mischief, making them difficult to track. A dedicated section would permit Statistics Canada to better capture offenses, improving federal and provincial data for police-driven public security. Third, standardized reporting would help identify repeat offenders, extremist networks, and emerging hate threats, allowing police to proactively reduce crime with appropriately allocated police resources. Fourth, reliable data supports evidence-based policing and fair allocation of funding. Governments cannot fund criminal issues that are not objectively measured. Better data informs government policy, Crown prosecution, investigations, prevention programs, victim support, and community initiatives. Fifth, establishing the section increases public trust. Codifying hate crime as a distinct offense sends a clear message. Hate crimes against marginalized groups will never be tolerated in Canada. Sixth, this codification reaffirms Canada's democratic values of equality, inclusion, and respect for diversity and human rights. Hate crimes target individuals and the very principles that sustain Canada's social cohesion. Finally, this change will enhance police and Crown education and provide clarity to the courts. A clear legislative framework ensures consistent and informed justice across all provinces and territories. Canada's hate crime laws have been historically reactive. C9's changes would mark the difference of proactive and preventative steps forward for everyone involved in the criminal justice. In closing, EPS supports the objectives of Bill C9, strengthening our legislative framework, improving data integrity and intelligence sharing, enhancing hate crime prevention, and rebuilding public trust benefits for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. Over to you, Derek. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. It is a privilege to appear today on behalf of Christian Legal Fellowship. Thank you for the opportunity to share our perspectives on Bill C9. CLF is a national association of over 750 legal professionals working with faith communities and other groups across Canada. CLF is also an NGO with special consultative status with the United Nations and has intervened as a friend of the courts in over 40 cases involving the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, including in Whatcott, where the Supreme Court cited CLF submissions in its unanimous decision. Let me start by affirming that CLF shares the government's desire to combat all acts that propagate and normalize hatred And so we wish to ensure that initiatives like Bill C9 are both effective and constitutionally sound. And that requires a carefully tailored approach in defining exactly what is being criminalized and in what circumstances. The criminal code is, as you know, contains the most severe penalties in our legal system. So the stakes are high in finding the right balance. It means the difference between someone's liberty or incarceration. So in this context, when it comes to defining hateful expression, we need to ask some hard questions. When should someone be imprisoned, separated from their families, from society, branded a criminal because of the words they speak or the views they express? What might we deprive our communities of? Whose voices might be silenced if we don't strike the right balance? What legitimate ideas might never be heard if people are afraid to speak up for fear of being prosecuted as hateful when they aren't hateful at all? At the same time, how do we deal with the concerns that we've just heard about, with the growing animus in our country, particularly that which is directed towards minority religious groups? How do we deal with the very real harms that flow from that animus? These are important questions that this committee is wrestling with, that this bill is wrestling with, that we all are wrestling with. And it's important, it's absolutely crucial that we get this right. It is often said that the law is a teacher, and people will learn and look to laws like this one, especially when it comes to our public discourse. In fact, the Supreme Court recently recognized that allegations of hatred are often used in public discourse and used in ways that well exceed their narrow meaning within the legal system. So when it comes to the criminal law, we have to have a clear understanding of what we mean by hatred and why it is a legitimate subject for criminal intervention. Hatred of people is evil, and public manifestations of that evil are appropriately addressed through the criminal law. Other aspects of hatred ought to be addressed through different avenues, such as educational, mental, spiritual, and community supports. Criminal intervention is justified only when someone takes action, what the Supreme Court has called extreme manifestations of hatred. And it is important that we always recognize why that is. It's not because we find certain views offensive, as repugnant as we might find them. It's not because we object to what people think or feel. It's the mode and effect of expression, not the expression itself or the content of the expression itself, that the law must target. The Supreme Court has been very clear on that point. And so the criminal law is concerned when someone takes action to mobilize others to deny a group's intrinsic dignity, to treat them as lesser beings, to take actions which effectively dehumanize others, actions which are ultimately a rejection of a basic compact of our community life together. That is what should be targeted. Expressions that fall short of that threshold, offensive as they might be, should not be criminalized. And so while there's a legitimate role for the criminal law in combating hatred, the law must be carefully tailored to those goals. And we've identified three primary concerns with Bill C9 in this regard. I'll just quickly summarize them in conclusion. First is the definition of hatred. The term hatred in any context is highly susceptible to subjective interpretation and must be defined more precisely than it is currently in the bill. Second, the proposed new motive offense requires clarification for a number of reasons, which we can get into. We suggest in our written brief that this offense should focus not on an accused's internal emotional motivations, but on whether an accused commits an offense with the intent to incite hatred. And again, how we define hatred is a crucial issue here. And finally, there should be explicit recognition of the freedom to discuss and criticize beliefs, opinions, or practices in good faith. And this clearly would communicate that disagreement is not detestation. That is also consistent with the defenses contained in Section 319.3, which should be also retained to help ensure that the legislation complies with the Charter. A clear line must be drawn between expression that seeks to vilify groups on the one hand and expression which simply seeks to challenge ideas on the other. And substantive amendments are needed in Bill C9 to help achieve that demarcation and strengthen the government's efforts to combat hatred in line with the Charter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Over to you, Tim, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the committee for this invitation today. I'm here on behalf of the International Civil Liberties Monitoring Group, a coalition of 45 Canadian organizations from a broad range of sectors. ICLMG was founded in 2002 to serve as a watchdog around the impacts of Canada's national security and anti-terrorism laws on civil liberties. Our coalition has observed with distress the increase in hate-based violence across Canada over the past several years. We believe that greater measures must be taken to address instances of hate-based violence, but that such measures must be targeted and specific and ensure that they do not unduly impact the civil liberties or charter rights of Canadians, including of those who the measures are ostensibly meant to protect. Unfortunately, several measures in C9 fail that test. We share the concerns of the 37 other signatories of an open letter led by the Canadian Civil Liberties Association that pointed to detailed and substantial problems with Bill C9 and ultimately called for it to be withdrawn and revisited. While we share the overall concerns expressed by our colleagues, today I would like to focus on one particular area of the bill. We are concerned with the provisions in Clause 4 of the bill that would create a new offense of willfully promoting hatred against any identifiable group by displaying certain symbols in public. These new provisions pose a significant threat to freedom of expression by granting broad and discretionary powers to police and by basing the determination of which symbols are included on a flawed terrorist listing process. Moreover, the provisions are redundant and therefore unnecessary. To begin with that last point, the willful promotion of hatred is already a criminal code offense. It is understood that the determination of willfully promoting hatred can already include the use of particular symbols, including those of listed terrorist entities. The only difference would be the wording will place greater emphasis on the use of a symbol in the commission of a hate offense. This leads to our second concern, that the wording of this new offense creates the serious risk of police making discretionary decisions related to what constitutes a symbol, quote, associated with, or, quote, used by a listed terrorist entity. Over the past several months, we have seen heated arguments and accusations that certain symbols associated with protests in support of Palestinian human rights are either hateful, are associated with a terrorist entity, or both. Peaceful and lawful protests have been unjustly accused of fomenting hatred based on the signs and slogans that they carry or chant. Under this new legislation, police can make a determination in a march, in the middle of a march or protest, not just of what constitutes a symbol associated with a terrorist entity, but that is being used to willfully promote hatred. There will continue to be pressure on police to stop and arrest anybody carrying a symbol that they may believe is used by or associated with a terrorist entity, whether that be a Hamas or Hezbollah flag, a keffiyeh, or a disputed slogan on a sign. This is made more complicated by the fact that police would be empowered to make the decision that a symbol so nearly resembles the symbol associated with a terrorist entity. For example, would Arabic writing on a sign that a police officer believes is similar enough to writing found on imagery used by a listed terrorist entity give rise to the grounds to arrest the individual? And this confusion would, of course, apply to all listed entities and could impact protests from a broad range of communities. These issues raise important questions of guilt by association or the tarring of entire movements with suspicion. We have seen this throughout the last 20 years of anti-terrorism measures and acutely over the last 2 years during protests or rallies, in academic settings, or even in parliamentary committee meetings. Given the severe potential for overreach, along with the stigma of being accused of committing a hate crime, we believe that this law will create a significant chill on free expression and dissent. Finally, we are also troubled by the fact that the symbols in question are based on the terrorist entities list, which itself is a problematic tool. Serious issues with Canada's terrorist entities listing procedure include the imposition of serious financial and possibly criminal consequences on the basis of unaccountable, secret executive listing decisions, the use of secret evidence, and the absence of adequate avenues for challenging listings and obtaining redress. Decisions to list or not list can also be political in nature. New criminal offenses, especially those that themselves invite discretionary decision-making, should not be founded on a process already demonstrated to raise significant constitutional concerns. As mentioned above, this is simply one of the many areas of concern with Bill C9. Beyond removing this section, we agree that the bill should be withdrawn and the government's approach revisited. Thank you very much, and I look forward to the questions.
Thank you, Mr. McSorley. Members, we have a good chunk of time. I'll read out the names for the first round, MP Lawton, MP Chang, et Monsieur Fortin. 6 minutes chaque, en suivi dans la séquence de 5-5, 2,5, 5-5.
6 minutes each, and then 5-5-5. I'll start on this side with 6 minutes.
You could switch over if you want to. Okay, so switch over with MP Brock. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for your attendance virtually and your participation in this important study. With time permitting, I'd like to ask questions for all three. I will start with Deputy Chief Chapdelaine. Thank you for your appearance. I've had the privilege of attending your city a number of times over the spring and summer, and met with, I believe, the acting chief at the time, and also the president of the Edmonton Police Association, predominantly to talk about bail issues and sentencing issues. We never really got into protests and hateful demonstrations that have plagued this country over the last several years. So I'd like to know, because when I do my tours across the country, I get a lot of mixed reviews from community members and stakeholders about the differences displayed by police services in relation to how they deal with these type of protests. And I'm not going to mention the jurisdiction, but I've actually had a couple of jurisdictions where they basically said they take their marching orders from the local municipality. And if the local municipality has a political persuasion to allow these types of events to occur, they've been instructed to act not necessarily as sworn-in police officers, but more or less just peacekeepers. And I've had numerous examples brought to my attention of open acts of criminality, and the police simply are not charging. So I'd like to know from your perspective what is happening on the ground in Edmonton.
Thank you for the question. So in regards to that, like we have built up in Edmonton a large, a contingent of members who work specifically with multiple communities around these kind of events. Obviously, our direction to our membership is not driven so much by the municipality, but by ourselves as executives in here, and what our expectations are about treating all people equally, right? Protecting the grounds that people have for freedom of speech, but ensuring that it's done in a manner that is respectful of others. And so I know, with EPS, and I mentioned it in some of the other stuff, with our ability to have a very active hate crimes unit, as compared to many other police of jurisdiction. We work closely together with our hate crimes unit, with our police liaison team who work with some of the protests as these things come up, and have built strong relationships with community to understand when these things are going to happen, or people want to have events, particularly in Edmonton. We have it at our provincial legislative grounds. We work closely with them to ensure that it's done in a safe manner. Of course, we try and lay out those expectations and develop what this is going to look like prior to these events. So a lot of it comes down to some good planning and making sure that people are abiding by it. And if there is a need to do any further enforcement, right, we work through that. We don't necessarily will act immediately upon, then we'll continue to take that and investigate if there's a need afterwards.
Thank you, Chief. I have limited time, so unfortunately I have to cut you off there. Is it fair to say that those who have crossed the line of criminality with respect to these demonstrations, your service has made arrests where warranted?
I would say so. We haven't done very many arrests in that regard, but where there have been some, we have looked at what they've been doing. Now, what the charges were laid may have been, like I said, the mischief. It might not have been totally in regards to the hate crimes.
Do you have the view?
Yes.
Do you have the view that there are existing laws in place under the criminal code to deal with these issues surrounding protests and the hate that is demonstrated at the protests, that the tools already exist and is not necessarily required, that Bill C-9 provide additional police powers? Are you of that view, yes or no?
I'd say yes and no. I think there are laws that exist right now that we utilize because that's what we have to lean on. I think some of the changes in Bill C-9 provide the ability for us to lay the appropriate charges and capture that exactly about what exactly we're seeing and dealing with. And that's part of the problem of being able to not communicate what this looks like, is because we don't have specific charge types that capture this appropriately.
You said in your opening statement that you're supportive of the removal of AG consent. I wholeheartedly, with respect, disagree with you. As a former Crown attorney, I did not think the process to be overly cumbersome, and it provided the necessary overview mechanism when dealing with laying of these unique charges that we often do not see on a regular basis. But there is a problem with Bill C-9, and it's eliminated the oversight, the Crown oversight with respect to private prosecutions. Do you appreciate the error and the problem that exists?
Well, I just think right now, because there is so much gray in this space, that's why there's a need when we're exploring these kind of charges that we need to have that conversation. I think with some more specificity around what these charges are, I think that the things that are in place right now to allow for the Crown prosecutors to work with police to make sure we reach the level that's required can happen and can occur.
Okay. With time permitting, I'm going to turn matters over to Mr. Is that my time? I don't have time. I'm sorry to the rest of the panelists.
I made a mistake and read out the second hour, so that's on me. We'll follow with MP Dillon, ensuite Monsieur Fortin, et pour le deuxième tour, j'annoncerai le cas échéant les...
For the next round, I'll announce whatever members.
Yeah. MP Dillon for 6 minutes.
So much, Mr. Chair, and my first questions are for Deputy Chapdelaine. Thank you so much for your testimony today and relaying the importance as a frontline officer of incidents that are occurring in the community, and to also share your practical experience and knowledge with us as well, which is very important because we keep hearing over and over words are just words, hateful words are just words. Can you please tell us a little bit about the impact of these words in the community? And do you believe that they embolden and give those who are inciting violence to those who are capable of physical violence the ability and the license to go ahead and commit hateful crimes?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think right now, to answer your first part about that, like the impact community obviously is, it's quite heavy on some of the communities that see this and face this. I mean, we have difficulty as a police agency when we get into these spaces and try and, for lack of a better term, mediate some of the things that are happening, things that are being said, and we also respect that. Quite often, people have their opinion, and not to use the catchphrase used, it's awful, but it's lawful. So, we're quite attuned to the fact that when these things happen, the impact that it has, and working with those communities to support and have them understand that, our role as police officers and police agencies is to protect that freedom of speech, but make sure it's done in a way that is as respectful as it can be. And sometimes we can't reach the threshold that we need. We feel that this bill provides us with some of that more, like I said, more specificity around what these acts, what hate crimes definition is, and allows us to have a bit more ability to, on both sides of the sides here, to talk about what's acceptable and what is not. And right now, I think the gray space causes problems for law enforcement because depending on who is faced with it, they're coming up with their own interpretation of it. Now, we may not go fully to prosecution, but it also does cause harm to people on both sides when we have to interact with them and have those conversations. So it's very impactful. I think we see it, and I think people are seeking some clarity around this so that as law enforcement agencies, we can deal with it as best as we can when asked to do the jobs that we are asked to do and that we've signed up to do.
Thank you so much, and it's going to help me get right into the next question, which law enforcement keeps getting asked about. Removing the Attorney General consent requirement to help police act more swiftly. How important is it for frontline officers such as yourself or your team to be able to proceed quickly when dealing with hate-motivated offenses?
Well, I think the quicker, so thank you for that question as well. I think the quicker we can move through these things, the less time it takes for us to sort of sit there and wonder what's happening. So, I mean, obviously, again, it's going to be as quick as it is working with our Crown prosecutor partners around what this looks like before we lay these charges. When you add layers of approvals, it slows things down. There have been times when we've laid some charges and it's taken up to 18 months. And the impact that continues to have on community and those who are affected by this, regardless of what the outcome of the AG decision is on it, is like quite impactful for both sides, right? So the quicker we can make the appropriate decisions, and I think, there are checks and balances along the way in an investigation and consultation with prosecutors to ensure the evidence exists for these charges. And so, although the AG consent has been in place since its introduction to the criminal code in the 60s, there's been an increase in accountability and improved procedures since that time. And so currently proceeding with charges rests solely on the decision right now with the AG. Removing that allows us to move that a bit more quickly and I think has less impact on those involved.
You've actually answered two of my next questions. So it does show victims that hate incidents are taken seriously and dealt with immediately. And you keep speaking about interacting with them. I guess you see a lot of psychological harm as well. I mean, just because it's not physical doesn't mean psychological harm is absent from this whole scenario. Am I correct?
Correct. And we've actually seen a shift in the last year and a bit from more psychological harm, and that is always going to exist, but you're moving from the psychological with the addition of physical harm that we're seeing an increase, specifically in Edmonton in 2024 and 2025 that we've noted. So I think the psychological will always exist because that exists whether or not you were, there was violence involved in it, but now we're seeing a bit more, we're seeing more violence occurring in the events that we're investigating.
And I want to thank you so much as well for citing during your testimony something beautiful. I tried to capture the words. Hate crimes against marginalized groups will never be tolerated in Canada. I thank you. I thank your force for looking at that in this way. It's very meaningful, very impactful. You said something about the definition of hate crimes being absolutely necessary because it standardizes reporting and helps the police to proactively prevent such crimes because they're not subject to confusion among different police forces. There will be one definition across Canada. Can you please elaborate on that? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like I said, when we speak about the more than 170 police agencies right now that operate with different factions of hate crimes units, right? We don't have all the same sort of resources and funding available in each small agency. And so, in Edmonton, we know we have a strong hate crimes unit, but we also know that sitting across Canada, sitting in meetings that I sit at, my team sit at, when it comes to these discussions, that we see lots of variability around how people treat these and how people interact with people, and why not having a defined definition that actually grounds us about what this is, I think leads to more of the issues that I've seen from my peers presenting here today in regards to that impact on both sides, whether it's the person who's speaking out or the person who's receiving what's being said. And so I think if you have a definition that grounds us across Canada around what this means, it is only going to serve everybody involved much better.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. Monsieur le Député Fortin, 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank all the witnesses who've.
All right, gang, we're going to cross over to this. This is
so
Ogle,
we will be very strict with our.
And we've got two ministers that are hard to believe, but like our president of the Treasury Board, wait until you see him. They don't put him in front of the camera very often either. He is a disaster. Let's get into
our interventions for time, so please watch your clocks. Ministers as well, you each have a 5-minute opening statement. In order to get you out on time, I will hold you to that 5 minutes as well. Minister LAWTON, you are first. Welcome back. Please go ahead for 5 minutes.
De garder le temps avec autant d'assiduité parce que j'ai un.
I will watch the clock very closely because I have a flight to catch and my wife would not forgive me if I missed my flight. So thank you.
Aujourd'hui,
I'm here today with Ariane Reza, Deputy Minister of Public Services and Procurement Canada, and Scott Jones, President of Shared Services Canada. Thank you to them for being here. Since Canadians elected our government, they've sent a clear message. They want a government that spends responsibly, that gets concrete results, and that protects essential services in the long term. That's exactly what we're doing. We're trying to face challenges head-on, redefine international relationships, and meet the needs of Canadians in a rapidly changing world. Mr. Speaker, we all know the world is changing quickly. Geopolitical tensions are increasing. Technology is changing our world, and the rules are being rewritten in front of us. Canada needs to be ready to act to protect its economy and the essential services that Canadians depend on.
En tant que ministre.
That was the mandate I received, to modernize the government so that it can be more responsible and more efficient. This is why we're modernizing government systems by reducing useless costs and concentrating resources where they count the most. In other words, direct services to citizens. As part of this effort, we are adopting the same pragmatic approach and results-based approach that we tried to apply at Canada Post last September. So we're trying to make the necessary difficult decisions to ensure that essential services that Canadians depend on remain viable long-term.
GC Translate, an AI-powered translation tool developed in-house by the Translation Bureau within my department. This innovation is helping federal departments across process millions of words of official documents faster, more securely, and at a lower cost, reducing reliance on external services while strengthening the government's capacity to deliver in both official languages. It's exactly this kind of practical, results-driven innovation that shows Canadians their government is acting decisively to modernize operations and deliver better services for them. Federal procurement is one of the most powerful tools we have to drive opportunity and growth across the country. Every year, the Government of Canada purchases close to $60 billion in goods and services. PSPC and shared services manage more than 3/4 of that spending, but today this system can be slow and complex and doesn't always prioritize Canadian workers and businesses as effectively as it could. C'est pourquoi en juillet, notre gouvernement a mis en place une politique.
In July, our government implemented an interim policy on reciprocal procurement to ensure that Canadian suppliers have a fair chance abroad, just as foreign suppliers who bid on business here. We announced the Buy Canadian policy, which is a major initiative ensuring that every dollar supported by the Canadian dollar will support businesses here and strengthen our supply chains.
Canadian materials and suppliers, simplify procurement processes, and make it easier for small and medium-sized businesses to work with the federal government through a dedicated SME procurement program launching soon. Small and medium-sized enterprises represent 98% of Canadian businesses, employ over half of our workforce, and generate nearly half of our GDP, but they remain underrepresented in federal procurement. This program is a concrete step to change that, putting more opportunities directly into the hands of Canadians entrepreneurs, creating good jobs, and keeping more economic value here at home. Quant aux approvisionnements en défense, en octobre...
When it comes to defense procurement, in November, our government made an important decision by creating the new Defense Investment Agency under the leadership of my colleague, Secretary of State Stephen Pierre. This agency is the first of its kind for many decades, and it shows our desire to modernize processes. It will streamline procurement, eliminate redundancy, and help Canadian businesses develop, break out internationally, and it will give the modern equipment that the defense forces need to protect us. There's also the National Shipbuilding Strategy.
Off is the National Shipbuilding Strategy. À ce jour, plus de 36 milliards de dollars en contrats ont été attribués.
To date, around $36 billion in contracts have been awarded. That's about $3 billion per year of GDP, and it supports many jobs across the country. This is real growth, real jobs, and a concrete demonstration of Canadian know-how. We will continue to leverage on this success, to depend on this success, to spread this to other regions and sectors in order to strengthen our economic basis and protect our sovereignty. Now, when it comes to digital sovereignty, data sovereignty and cybersecurity are very important.
You're going to stay past your allotted time with us. The choice is yours.
Non, c'est correct, Monsieur le Président. Je suis sûr que j'aurai la chance de revenir sur
No,
ça.
that's okay, Chair. I'm sure I'll be able to come back to some of these issues during questions.
Welcome to Ogo. Please go ahead for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Bonjour tout le monde. Thank you for having me here today. This is my first time joining this committee, and it's good to see new and familiar faces. I'm here to talk about my priorities as the President of the Treasury Board. Let me begin by saying that none of this work happens without Canada's public service employees. They deliver programs and services that people rely on every single day. So through you, Chair, I would like to thank them for building Canada strong. To support these efforts, the Treasury Board Secretary determines the rules and provides directions so that the government is well managed and so that the Canadians are well served. Now, colleagues, let me start with the work we are doing on government spending. As this committee knows, every year detailed spending plans go through Treasury Board and then go to Parliament before any money is spent. One of our government's key priorities is to spend less on government operations and invest more in priorities like housing, defense, and infrastructure. That's why Minister of Finance and I launched the Comprehensive Expenditure Review earlier this year. More than 100 departments have put forward proposals, and I look forward to sharing the results with you as soon as possible. One of the many duties TBS has is setting the rules for how departments are managed and how government operates. We also lead the government's digital work to make sure our IT systems are reliable and deliver results for Canadians. To help public service employees in delivering results, TBS is using artificial intelligence as a new and important tool for government. That's why this year TBS launched Canada's first AI strategy for the federal public service. Our goal is to use AI responsibly to help people do their jobs better and deliver faster, more efficient services to Canadians. To improve service delivery, Canada's new government also announced the 60-day red tape review. We identified close to 500 initiatives across federal organizations to remove overly complicated regulations and streamline and reduce costs for businesses. For example, we're giving Canadians faster access to important medications by streamlining approvals from trusted countries. This change has already reduced wait times for some drug approvals by approximately 5 months. We are also modernizing regulations for Canadian farmers. These changes will help Canadian farmers and will make government more efficient and improve service delivery for Canadians. In addition, we have launched a review of the Access to Information Act. This is being guided by feedback from stakeholders and parliamentarians like yourselves. And we're also continuing to implement the Official Languages Act to promote and protect Canada's official languages. Furthermore, we're updating the language designation of federal offices, which will result in 700 more offices becoming bilingual across Canada. In closing, Mr. Chair, our goal at TBS is clear: a government that is transparent, accountable, and delivers results and quality services for Canadians. I look forward to your questions. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Minister. We'll start our 6-minute rounds with Mrs. Kusi. Mrs. Kusi, welcome back to Ogo. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. It's a pleasure to return and to be back at the Government Operations Committee. Minister Elie, like many Canadians, I'm very interested in seeing next week's budget. I'm particularly concerned that your government has abandoned your fiscal anchors. I will remind you that in 2024, the fall economic statement, that these anchors were to A, maintain a declining debt to GDP ratio, and B, uphold Canada's AAA credit rating. In the last few weeks, however, these anchors have seemingly disappeared. The PBO, in his September 25th report, stated, due to persistent budgetary deficits of over 1% of GDP, the federal debt to GDP ratio is projected to increase from 41.7% in 2024-2025, rising above 43% over the medium term. it is no longer projected to be on a declining path. On our AAA credit rating, the Financial Post headline from yesterday asks a clear question. Does Canada still deserve its AAA credit rating? Minister, I would argue that, as the PBO has stated, our debt to GDP ratio will be rising, that the deficit will rise to a minimum of $68.5 billion, not a small number. And that is without adding recent spending commitments from your government. It is valid to wonder, when your budget is tabled on Tuesday, will the reaction from the markets be that Canada still deserves its AAA credit rating? I'm not convinced. The Prime Minister refers to himself as a financial budget expert. However, based on reports from the PBO and other economists, Canadians are having trouble seeing this. So, Minister, on Tuesday, when your government presents its budget, are you purposely wanting it to fail so that an election will be called before Canadians feel the true economic effects of your government?
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for the question. As you know, that this government has committed to balancing its operating budget over the next 3 years. And in this context, the government is undertaking a comprehensive expenditure review to ensure government spending is responsible and deliver results for Canadians. With that phased approach over the next 3 years, organizations have put forward proposals where they can find saving, so we can find those savings and invest in the priorities matter most to Canadians. So that is coming forward, and more, I think it's this question related to Finance Minister who's presenting a budget on November 4th, and I believe this would be a generational budget. There would be investment in Canadian Armed Forces, in infrastructure, and Build Canada Home.
Minister Lightbound, last week the Auditor General released yet another report that outlines your government is failing when it comes to contracts. On the CRA call centre with IBM, your government oversaw the ballooning of this contract from $50 million to $190 million, and results weren't even met for Canadians. Earlier this week, the department said the government had learned a very hard lesson. But, Minister, when Canadians make a typo on their tax filings, the CRA doesn't accept their plea that they've learned their lesson. The CRA goes after them with the full weight of the federal government for the money owed. However, when it is your government that makes contracting errors, doesn't validate invoices, or scrutinize to ensure the money being spent is actually for a service provided, your department believes that learning a hard lesson is enough. On behalf of Canadian taxpayers, Minister, no, it's not enough. Even worse, last week was not the first time the Auditor General had delivered this message. Your government has been consistently criticized by the Auditor General on the lack of scrutiny, validation, and competition for multi-million-dollar contracts. In June, after tabling her audit on GC strategies, the auditor was extremely clear. The government need only follow the existing rules on procurement and contracting. It's clear that your government throws value for money out of the window at every single opportunity and instead rewards Liberal friends and insiders when developing contracts. Minister, when will you and your government listen to the Auditor General and finally ensure your departments and agencies follow the existing external contracting rules?
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président, et à travers vous, et merci à...
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to my honourable colleague for the question, through you. I reject the premise of several of her questions. If you look at what the Auditor General said in the most recent report in June, it's clearly said that the rules must be followed. There were no new recommendations made. The Auditor recognize the previous report's recommendations had been implemented. That's what we're doing. We're implemented everything that was submitted by the AG to ensure that we had transparency and competitiveness in our contracting process. Now, regarding specific contracts,
but perhaps you can finish with Ms. Suds's intervention. Please go ahead for 6 minutes, please.
All right, gang. So I can't watch that one like with an audience because I'll end up saying things on here that will get me in trouble. I'm not interested in that. I've got this piece to watch though, and this one is cut up. Like I've got this edited out. So it will be fun. Just give me a moment. I'll get it up here. Come on. Here we go. Oh, my Lord. Here we go. This is it. We're ready
Again,
to go.
these are used in exceptional circumstances and when it's deemed in
Like
the
what?
public interest. It's to manage the immigration system.
For the record and for the
make
analysts,
it more
I would like to
integrity.
note that the minister has not noted what those exceptional circumstances would be, and that is crazy.
And that is the
Unbelievable.
purpose for the legislation. It is meant to give...
Point of order, Mr. Fragiscaros, and it's time as well. Yes.
This is actually bananas and so anti-Canadian. So what are those specific safeguards? You haven't defined it in the legislation. You're sitting here blathering, and like you're literally asking us to say, yeah, we should give the government a right to just cancel mass PRs. Then you say that's how a government should be run? That sounds like an authoritarian dictatorship to me. Why should I give you the powers to do that? That sounds absolutely
Again, these
insane.
are not...
Gang, what's up? Aaron here, Canadian Looney. Do you know who Lena Diab is? She's a MP from Nova Scotia here. We're not proud of that. She's our Minister of Immigration. And let me tell you, whatever is going on in our government, it's deliberate sabotage. She's evidence of that. She's here facing Michelle Rempel-Garner in committee. This is the Immigration Committee. They're conducting an investigation and the minister shows up. Lena Diab, like, once you see this, you cannot put the toothpaste back in the tube. It's hard to believe. Michelle Rempel-Garner is going to go up a couple of points in your books, guaranteed. A lot of people think she's tied to the WEF. Nothing is further from the truth. Anyhow, you can find out if you research online. She's got a Substack column that she does. You can find out what Michelle Rempel-Garner really thinks of that organization. Anyhow, let's get into this video. This is out of control. Like, Lena Diab fights with Michelle Rempel-Garner, but Michelle Rempel-Garner is smart and Lena Diab is simple. Let's take a look and a listen. I'll check you out after the first round because there are so many things in this video coming up. Let's take a peek. It's a bit long, but it's all in context. As soon as you're not entertained, get out of here. You'll be entertained. This is, if it wasn't real life, it would be funny, but it's real life. Let's take a look.
Hey, that's something everyone can enjoy.
And we start off with Ms. Rempel-Garner.
What a mess. There's over 300,000 asylum claims. Your government, that will likely take 25 years to process the backlog. Your government has spent almost over $2 billion on things like hotel rooms for bogus asylum claimants. Bogus asylum claimants are getting resources that Canadians aren't eligible for, and here we are today. Minister, the Canadian Bar Association, Refugee Lab, Amnesty International, and other legal advocacy groups have argued that the immigration provisions found in Bill C-12 are unconstitutional. Several of them have said that they are preparing for challenges, that there could be over 24,000 court challenges. Have you, Minister, directed your officials to begin preparing to defend the provisions of this bill in court in advance of these challenges?
So thank you very much, member, for that question. There's two parts to it. The first, you're talking about asylum. So our government is committed to rebuilding Canadians' trust in Canada's immigration system.
Thank you.
Making
I
our
asked
borders
you a pointed
stronger.
question, and Chair, I realize but I asked a pointed question, so I expect a pointed response. Have you directed your officials to begin preparing for legal challenges, to defend those in court? You're asking us to support this bill. it is highly likely to be challenged in the courts, have you directed your officials to begin preparing legal defenses?
So thank you for the question. Again, the intent of the ineligibility measures are to protect the integrity and the efficiency of the in-Canada asylum system against sudden increases.
Thank you. So I'll take that as a no with your word salad, which is just really unfortunate because you are asking us to support this bill, which virtually every legal association in the country has said is unconstitutional, and you're word salading us on whether or not you have directed your officials to begin preparing it. So would you say that it is fair to characterize, given that what you've just said, that this is an attempt by the Liberal government to punt the mess of the asylum system to the courts?
So again, I don't know what salad you're speaking of, but the courts have confirmed that neither the Charter nor the Refugee Convention require a particular form of refugee determination process. In this legislation, we have the PROS system, the pre-removal risk disorder, the pre-removal order, and so the government's position is that these provisions are consistent with both the Charter and with the Canada's international refugee law obligations.
So I'll just ask one of your officials, is, in the ministry's opinion, is the asylum deadline contained in Bill C-12 Charter compliant? Anybody? No?
Can I get a clarification, Madam Chair, the deadline?
What
Correct.
deadline?
So it's the deadline by which that somebody has to apply. I think that there's an arbitrary timeline. Is that charter compliant?
So again, our assessment based on the bill being tabled is the provisions are consistent.
Thank you. Okay. So these provisions are going to be appealed. Minister, you haven't directed your officials to begin preparing to defend these appeals, so it's highly likely that many people will perceive the measures in this bill as a way to just punt. The government is punting this to the courts. Have you consulted with your provincial colleagues and come up with a cost estimate of the legal costs it will, cost provincial governments in terms of bogus asylum claims challenging the provisions in this bill?
Well, again, charter challenges would go through the federal court system, and that is the
but there are
responsibility of the federal government, and I've got the justice officials here.
Who pays for the legal aid, Minister?
That is the responsibility of federal government.
But there's also provincial support that happens as well, too, right? And that's what you haven't done. You haven't gone to provincial governments, as you guys #welcome to Canada, 300,000 plus bogus asylum claimants across the border from the U.S. I digress. A recent news story involved over 200 similar stories where applications for asylum were used. They used copy and paste language, and they all shared a similar immigration consultant. Why doesn't Bill C-12 contain provisions to require asylum claimants to state their reasons for claiming asylum orally on the record upon arriving into Canada to prevent this type of fraud?
Look, excellent. Look, these are excellent. That's exactly why we're here today, to study these provisions. These are to protect us against fraud.
Yes,
and about fraudulent claims.
So that's not in the bill. Why isn't it in the bill?
The approach targets fraud in individual applications as well as a coordinated fraud scheme to prevent systemic abuse within the immigration and citizenship programs, and does hold actors accountable.
That's not in the bill. Shouldn't asylum claimants have to prove that they made their claim in a timely manner instead of making the government do so? And why didn't you include that provision in Bill C-12?
So there are clear provisions in this act
but not
in terms
that
of the ineligibility rules,
not that
the 1 year
provision.
deadline and the 14 day.
But those are likely to be punted to the courts, and some simple switches, which could have prevented people from abusing the asylum system, you chose not to include, which is interesting. Minister, have you done any sort of studies on the totality of costs of bogus asylum claimants with regard to benefits across the or across jurisdictions over the last 6 years?
I just recently met with the the provincial territorial, and we actually discussed, that was part of the discussion that we also talked about it. We talked about federal support.
What was the total cost?
I'm sorry, that's time. You're going to have to continue this in the next round, Ms. Rempel-Gardner.
Whoops. All right. We're going to wrap up, guys. We've been on here for 3 hours already, so we're just going to wind down. It's been a good week. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. I've got a lot more to show in that video. I'm going to post that as a regular video. I'm not going to show it all on here. So thank you all for watching. My name's Aaron. This is Canadian Looney. I'd like to thank everybody that tunes in. I'd like to thank my moderators. It's a great team we've got. It's wonderful when everybody shows up. It's a lot more fun. And not shows up. I know when people are available, they try to get in. And that is it. We're very curious to see what's going to happen with next week's budget. I'm petrified for Canadians. The Liberals wouldn't be trying to pull it off if they didn't think they could pull it off. Like, imagine all the ridiculous policies that they've put through to screw over Canadians and act like it's, for the betterment of the country when it's better for their pockets. That's it. And I don't know exactly what they're up to, like in this, what they're doing right now, but I'm certain they wouldn't be trying to pull it off if they didn't think they could pull it off. So imagine Mark Carney came in when the Conservatives were up like dozens of points, and the Liberals almost won a majority with elbows up because Canadians want to be naive. Not the people that watch here. These are people that want to be informed and learn what is actually happening. And it's hard to find. I know that there are many great YouTubers. I'll list off a couple of my favorites. I'm a big fan of Moose on the Loose. I have great respect for the work that he does. He must work so hard, and he's good at what he does. Who else is good on? There's a few. Like, you guys watch this stuff. Northern Perspective is great. They're a little bit too corporate for me, but what are you going to do? Again, we're wrapping up for now. Thank you all so much for tuning in. And we're going out on Romper Room if we can find it. This is it. Thanks again, everybody, for watching.
You should do exercises. That's important to our good health. And friends, tomorrow we are going to be visiting with a fisherman who will tell us about his very enjoyable hobby. Now, I would like to see you all through our magic mirror. Romper bumper, stomper boo, tell me do. Magic mirror, please tell me today, did all of my friends have fun at play? I see all of my friends in Alberta. It's nice to see you. And I see Dan and Vivian. I see Marlon and Mona. I see Catherine and Harley. I see Anne and Elizabeth and Jane. I see Bert and Nicole, and I see you too. I hope to see you tomorrow, right here in Romper Room. Ding dong, knock knock, hey daddy do. Bing bong, tick tock, bebop boom.
Kick off your weekend with exciting CFL action when the Edmonton Eskimos tackle the BC Lions in Vancouver. Tomorrow night at 10:30 on CFTO TV.
Ding dong, knock knock, hey daddy do. Tip tap, pitter pat, granny cat too. Rooty toot, kimble, loopy loo. Bobbity stompity, romper room and friends.
All right, gang, everybody have a happy Halloween. Trick or treat. Stay safe out there. It's miserable weather here for Halloween. Like, it's pouring rain. It's coming down sideways. What are you going to do? Not a fun one for the kids. Thanks again, everybody, for watching. Take care. We'll be back on Monday with more question period. I don't know if we're going to do any live shows this weekend, but there will be videos, so check a few of them out. We'll try to show some people what's going on in Canadian federal politics. All right.